106 miles to Chicago. We got a full tank of gas, half a pack of cigarettes. It's dark, and we're wearing sunglasses. Hit it. It's 106 miles to Chicago. We got a full tank of gas, half a pack of cigarettes. It's dark, and we're wearing sunglasses. Hit it.
That's good.
Good evening, Chicago, and welcome back to another Friday night edition of Chicago Corner. I'm your host, Jerry Vasilatos, in what we expect and trust will be an extraordinary evening of commentary, conversation, and news analysis. I want to, at the top here, first of all, tease that we are going to be having a very, very extraordinary gentleman on the program at 8:30. His name is Joe Evans. He's known as Idaho Joe. Joe is a homeless veteran who is running for mayor in Idaho. He has an extraordinary personal story. He's also a YouTube talk streamer. I've actually co-hosted some shows and participated in some panels with Joe over at KRTD Media. And I also want to thank our patron of the show, Shane Coughlin, for letting me know what Joe's been up to these days, because I think that his story is really going to speak to the power of somebody, despite insurmountable circumstances against them, standing up to the challenge and not letting the average, not even average, extraordinary things that are impacting his life not stop him from trying to do what's right as a potential mayor in the city he's running for in Idaho, and make some kind of a difference standing up to the status quo. As we've been watching on the national front, I think Cornel West, and maybe to a lesser degree only because he's a Democrat, but I still think a substantial degree, and I do respect him, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. So stick around for our 8:30 hour. We're going to cover some other stories before then. And as I get to those stories, it has kind of been, I don't want to say a slow news week, but there have been some good things happening this week, especially in regards to further strides Mayor Johnson's administration has made along with our Progressive Caucus and City Council. So joining me tonight, as always, to talk about what's happening in Chicago and nationally is Oreo. No, not just Oreo. My friend, Edward Heller.
Yes, but mostly Oreo.
Well, he's going to take control of the show wherever he can tonight.
Well, he tried at the Open, didn't he?
He did. That was you saw the hiccup with the restart. That was a paw on the keyboard hitting our titles again.
Yeah, I was like, wait, I'm like, countdown stopped and restarted. Oh, yeah, Oreo must have hit the keyboard.
Yes, he did. My little boy here. The amazing thing about this little guy, as much as he sometimes a pain in the ass, and I say that lovingly. He's not a pain in the ass. He's just so affectionate. He's so curious. He's so loyal. I mean, this guy, Ed, I leave my desk. He jumps off the desk and literally leads me through my apartment to the kitchen like he's my little minion. I go to the bathroom. He jumps up on the radiator to make sure everything comes out okay. I go to bed, jumps up next to me, although I will say my other two cats, are also comfort. They're just not as camera social, but they will stick around me when I'm not here on Chicago Corner with you. But yeah.
Lainey's in the live chat.
And she knows
hi,
with me.
Lainey.
Hey, Lainey. By the way, Lainey and Tom, thank you so much for joining us last Friday when I had tech problems, which we expect are finally worked out, thanks to the engineering talents of Mr. Heller down in the Starship Chicago Corner engineering section, who helped me with my computer last Saturday. We seemed to have a successful show Tuesday without too many hiccups. But Lainey, I texted with prior to the show, and the Chicago Wine Corner program that you saw last Friday when I couldn't join.
Wine Report.
Wine Report. What I say, Chicago Wine Corner?
Yeah.
Sorry, Lainey.
You'll have to confirm with Lainey and Tom if they want to rebrand, but that would be good too.
It's going to stay Chicago Wine Report.
Yeah, that's fine. That's good.
But yeah, she texted and asked if she and Tom can come on again next Friday, and I said, no, you can't. You can have your own show every week for 30 minutes to an hour. So
actually, that's a great idea. Actually,
yes, Chicago Wine Report. We will be in its own time slot for whatever amount of time Lainey and Tom want to cover. I'm imagining 30 to 60 minutes, as last week's segment went. So once we know what day they're going to be on, whether it's going to be live or pre-recorded, we will formally announce that. And Lainey, welcome to the Chicago Corner Network. We're in talks, she says. No, we're not in talks. It's pretty much a done deal.
We're friendly. We talk.
We do talk. So, thank you, Lainey. We are too. She's excited. So yeah, I want to share also at the top of the show here, we're going to be talking about the Barbie phenomena at the end of the show, mostly because we know that putting it in our show title on YouTube will hopefully get us clicks, because that's like the big trending pop cultural phenomena this weekend. But I have been
Barbenheimer.
Well, no, Barbie is. Less people are paying attention to Oppenheimer than Barbie, which is troubling to me based on things I've heard about Barbie, and I haven't seen it. And I'm not going to go judge the movie, not having seen it. But at the end of the show, we're going to reflect on the actual history and origins of Barbie that apparently Mattel and the filmmakers have chosen to reimagine for their movie. Because when you hear, and many of you might already know this, Barbie's origins as a call girl in Germany in cartoons, you're going to be like, wait, what? But we'll save that for the end of the show, because it's kind of a funny little pop culture story. Speaking of pop culture, seems Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny has at least made its money back as far as the box office, which I'm happy for Harrison Ford and Lucasfilm. I've spent a lot of time this week watching old interviews with Harrison Ford on YouTube, because he can either be a real curmudgeon or very, very funny. But it occurred to me as I was coming across some commentators in interviews that he didn't do, remarking and kind of snidely commenting on the fact that Harrison's been one of the oldest like hippie potheads in Hollywood. It's no secret Harrison Ford clearly imbibes. But what I realized, I don't know that maybe that's as much of a choice he made for recreation as much of a choice he made for ongoing excruciating pain relief. And I'll tell you why I came across this realization. Remember the pain shot I got, the steroid shot I got to my back last Friday, Ed? Supposed to anti-inflammatory for the herniated disc. Well, all the relief disappeared yesterday.
Oh, that's a shame.
And I'm back on my nose.
Yeah, that can happen sometimes with those steroid injections. It's like you'll get some upfront relief, and then all of a sudden your body's like, nah, that wasn't enough.
Well, my doctor told me either I'm past the stage of the quick relief, but now I have to wait for the steroids to like do the rest of their work to lessen the inflammation of the disc.
That's right, isn't it? Go ahead, Jerry.
Or it's not working, in which case I have to wait till August 1st to see my spine doctor. But this is where I bring it all the way around home to Harrison Ford. We know that marijuana is used a lot for pain relief, and the guy herniated his disc when he was shooting Temple of Doom. He had the wheel of the airplane run over his leg in Raiders of the Lost Ark. He's crashed airplanes. He had the whole door of the Millennium Falcon come down on him when he was shooting Force Awakens. Harrison Ford is like the consummate workaholic veteran where he does the job, he doesn't complain. But I have a feeling a lot of his marijuana use or his smoking probably also has as much to do with pain relief for a guy who's gone through as much as he had through his action star career as just recreationally. So let's not judge. Well, first of all, let's not judge anybody who uses it recreationally, but let's especially not judge anybody who may also need to rely on the medicinal relief. Although I'm not somebody who smokes marijuana, I'm just glad that my doctor renewed my pain prescriptions, because for me to wait till August 1st, I know it's going to, I can't stand up straight without sharp pain in my lower back. Even sitting here, I'm like, I got to lean on my right side, not my left, because you press on that nerve, it's going to ache. So
I see on the YouTube, we got all those little icons floating up in the air.
We do? What does that mean?
There's a little button in the chat on the lower right of the live chat that lets you like throw little icons up in here, like little hearts and smiley faces and stuff.
So are some of our viewers?
So some of our viewers are hitting that button pretty hard. So thank you.
Cool. Thanks, everybody. We sense that means you approve.
Yeah, or it means you found a button that's fun to keep pressing, which is also cool.
And I think maybe it's Art, because Art just commented in the chat. He's really high right now, so maybe he's celebrating by pushing that button.
Yeah. So thanks, Art, and everybody else pressing the button. But mostly Art, probably.
And speaking of Art, and Ed too, if we can manage this on an evening or afternoon that I'm really doped up on my pain relief. I want us to see Oppenheimer and do a review on that, because I think that's a really interesting film, especially in relation to, our place in the world, the nuclear arms race, potential war brewing in Europe because of the Ukraine situation with Russia. Mm-hmm. Hopefully we'll be able to present a review of that as a standalone show soon. How was your week, Ed?
It wasn't too bad. Just the usual 9 to 5 stuff. And then, as usual, trying to figure out how I'm going to keep paying my bills, which is always that's the main part of the stress that I have. Although, funny enough, this week I haven't really felt it like I've felt it in previous weeks, which is weird because the problem's still there. I still haven't resolved some of my financial issues, but I'm not feeling as terrible about it, and I'm not doing marijuana in any way. I'm not taking gummies, not doing edibles, not smoking any of that stuff. I still can't afford that. But something in my head must have switched to where it's just not bothering me in the same way, and so maybe I think that's positive.
Well, are your spirits elevated with the judge's ruling regarding the denial of the AMC settlement?
I still didn't really know what to make of that whole lawsuit judgment thing, because I said, either way, we're still basically just holding on to the stock and waiting.
Well, yes and no. Here's what's interesting. Going into financial talk here on Chicago Corner. Yesterday, AMC was the most highly borrowed stock at a rate of 1,000%. What that means is all the hedge funds who claim the stock is worthless are willing to pay 1,000% interest, borrowing the stock
to borrow it,
to keep up this game, playing back and forth with the barcodes and manipulating the price action to keep kicking the can down the road so that they don't have to cover their short positions and return the shares that they borrowed at the current value that they're worth. Well, The judge ruled today after 2 weeks in this lawsuit, this class action lawsuit against AMC, by which the plaintiffs pretty much presented the case and proved that AMC has been in on a lot of this collusion, a lot of not intentional manipulation, but sitting by the sidelines, letting things happen, because they don't want the people who saved their company, who bought all these shares for the past 2 years, to suddenly cash out if the hedge funds have to cover their positions and the price goes up. Now, when the settlement was denied today, this was a good thing because it means all of the short sellers who've been borrowing the stock at 1,000% interest, they're still stuck, even worse, paying a higher rate. The stock went up from a little over $4 after hours to over $8, which is 100%.
Oh, really?
You didn't hear this?
No, I didn't hear about because
yeah.
I don't follow aftermarket prices.
We were up 100% after market today, and I think it's still at about 7 something. So let's see what happens.
The Battle of 801 is back.
That's right. Let's see what happens Monday if any of these these hedge funds are finally actually held accountable in their failures to deliver, to actually start closing their positions, because the SEC has been looking the other way and allowing them not to cover their short positions, even though they should have been margin called like a year ago with how things are being screwed around.
Yeah, I hate to say it, Jerry, but in the live chat on YouTube, you have a doppelganger in the chat.
I do.
Prop, is that you? Come on. If you're a prop, you got to tell us. Isn't that how the phrase goes?
That's interesting. That's not me. And my YouTube account.
If I had to guess, it's propaganda.
Well, my Nightstar account is under Nightstar. I'm sorry, my YouTube account is under Nightstar Productions. So it looks like somebody's using my name for it.
That's what I'm saying. I'm
you
like, it's one of our I don't know how you could call it. I wouldn't necessarily call them allies. But they're kind of acquaintances of acquaintances who like to go into chat rooms and just stir up stuff.
Yeah, but that's a YouTube account that actually has my name and my photo on it.
Yeah, but it could just be, but he's got the red eyes, so you can kind of tell it's just.
Oh, it's somebody. Oh, you know what?
Messing. Yeah.
Could
be. I mean, on Arturo, do you make fake accounts?
No, I'm wondering if somebody who decided to give me the red eyes might be somebody that were currently engaged in some business matter, some business disagreement.
No, I don't think so. You
wouldn't put it past them.
No, if I had to guess, it's probably prop. But maybe Uncle
probably
Warren
prop.
Yeah, prop, short for propaganda. It's a guy who likes to do this a lot.
Oh, okay, okay.
Come on, prop. If you're a prop, you got to tell us.
I don't know how I feel about somebody creating a YouTube page and misrepresenting.
I know.
it.
That's my play on words, though. It's like, when people say if you're a cop, you got to tell me. By the way, that's never been true. They don't have to tell you.
Oh.
Cops don't have to tell you that they're cops. Prop does, though. Prop, you got to tell us.
We'll have to keep an eye on that. Speaking of your money woes, when I went like this, I might have a buyer for your comic books. A comic book speculator friend of mine who I shared your information regarding the stuff you've got and the stuff you're looking to upload.
Well, I'd be happy to talk to him,
I will put you in touch with him, and he'd like to come by and take a look at what's there. And I want to tell you ahead of time, though, research what you want for your stuff, the best price, because he's a fair buyer, fair negotiator, but I want to make sure that if you do decide to do any deals with him, that you're happy too. So I'll set that up for you.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I would say I would start with, which titles are you interested in, and let me get back to you on where we want to go from there. But yeah.
If you are able to add really quickly, I'll just say this before I forget, just put a list together of what you've got, like even in a text document.
It's a big list.
Well, then you're going to have to download. You're going to have to
Yeah.
download that app I gave you and use the UPC code.
Oh, I've got it. We can take this conversation off air. It's just a lot of stuff I got to deal with.
Sounds good. Just want to see if I can be of any help there. Here we go. Yeah. There you go.
Here we go.
Yes.
See,
my
nice.
suspicions were correct.
Oh, you know what? They were. Should we take screenshots of this?
Yes. So we can send them over to the Illinois Department of Labor and my lawyer. Yeah. Let's screen grab all this.
Okay, cool. Cool.
Remember, everybody, I stole Chicago Corner from Daniel Lupker. Apparently, they got that email, Ed, that we didn't get the return receipt on.
Oh, did they? Okay.
Well, I would imagine, since this is now.
Hey, look, someone could have just said, yeah, they control the Rockfin now, but no.
Yeah.
They had to F around, and now they're finding out.
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't want to do this.
It's hilarious. By the way, everybody, if you're interested in knowing the behind-the-scenes scoop on what happened there, please become a patron of the show. $5 a month. We have an exclusive Patreon episode that we produced for our supporters that went up, I think it was Sunday or Monday. And hey, Jerry, please continue. I would love to see all of these claims, This is why I'm fine letting it run, Ed. This is
too late. They're done.
Libel.
They're gone.
It's no, what do we call it? It's not libel. It's what's the other word?
Impersonation?
No, not impersonation. When you're smearing somebody.
Oh, slander? Yeah.
Slander. Yeah.
It's slander.
We've got our slander. We've got our evidence of slander. And when I find out from YouTube who's taken my name and using my picture and specifically citing somebody that I haven't identified that's related to all this, I think it's going to make our case pretty strong, along with this video that I'll be happy to share with the Illinois Department of Labor regarding our good faith communications with certain parties that have made our worker-owned co-op very, very difficult to launch. Yeah, Art, looks like it did just happen.
It's all right. I got a screenshot.
I stole from Daniel. $27,000 in services over 2 years' time, valued at working for a corporation that doesn't understand it's against the law to have unpaid workers if you're a business in Illinois. Okay.
And that we weren't even going to press that.
No,
that wasn't
we weren't.
even an issue that we even were going to deal with or bring up.
No, actually, we were forced to bring it up in regards to tip revenue that we identify as wages with our Rockfin account that got taken from us. So that disappeared due to no communication regarding crypto wallets attached to the Rockfin account. Ooh, we're dishing the dirt here tonight. Anyway, we got to move forward because we're going to have our special guest Joe Evans at 8:30. But let's get into our first story. Let me see do you have the screen?
You want to bring it up? I can bring it up.
I might be able to bring it up too. That's what she said.
Yeah. Hold on a second. Stand by for news.
It appears my browser is actually.
That's my. Yeah. Better knock on some more wood though, because I'm hearing some audio dropouts over here.
Oh, from my end?
Yeah, I don't know if it's my connection or if it's yours, but.
All right, no problem.
Yeah, so everybody, if you're noticing any weird video issues or audio issues, just let us know in the chat, and we'll see.
Some people are going to be very, very unhappy. They decided to jump into our live chat and slander us during a live stream, and we have.
Yeah, that's So some people they go off the handle and make rash decisions based on emotion. I mean, it's not our problem anymore, I don't think. No,
we're basically mopping up the mess. We're basically proving that at a certain point, you really do need to consider the advice, fuck around and find out. Because certain people have fucked around and they're soon going to find out. Speaking of making rash decisions on emotion, as we saw.
Hold on a sec. You know what, Jerry? I think we need to do a clean break in this segment just so that we can make sure that if we need to clip this out later. So hang on one second.
Okay.
Hi, and welcome back to Chicago Corner. It's Friday with our wonderful host, Jerry Vasilatos. I am along for the ride. I'm deep dish pizza enthusiast Edward Heller, and I want to thank everyone for watching us here on Chicago Corner. I hope you will like, share, and subscribe, and tell all your friends to go watch Chicago Corner.
We've got some big news tonight, and we've reported on the story in the past. The Chicago Housing Authority deciding to give a sweet deal to the Chicago Fire soccer team to repurpose CHA land that was formerly reserved for displaced low-income residents and put up not even a stadium, but a training field.
Oh, I've got the wrong story up. Hold on.
Let
me put this one up. Okay.
That's what it is. Yeah.
All right, here it is.
I mean, we're looking at the Bears leaving the city of Chicago and having Soldier Field available for a lot of other events. I don't understand why the previous administration didn't consider, doing a sweet deal with the Chicago Fire soccer team to use Soldier Field as a training facility, in the potential absence of the Bears. But this comes from Block Club Chicago, Mike Dumka. Mayor can still stop billionaire soccer team from taking over public housing land, activists said. This group of activists have been working tirelessly to bring attention to this matter and to make sure that low-income residents who've been previously displaced have an opportunity at affordable housing, as well as address this insane concept and what do we want to call decision that it's acceptable for CHA to make sweet deals with private corporations that can afford their own facilities, let alone not realize how really bad it looks that the billionaire owner of the Chicago Fire team made some substantial donations to Lori Lightfoot's last bid for mayor. The Chicago Fire team is building a practice facility on land long reserved for public housing. Activists speaking over bulldozers say the mayor could still get new homes built there instead. But they gathered Thursday at a former public housing site to deliver a message. They're not done fighting to stop a billionaire-owned sports team from taking over the near West Side property. In prayers and speeches, the activists also called on Mayor Brandon Johnson to fulfill his campaign promise to end the sell-off of public housing land for sports facilities and other non-housing developments. Quote, "I'm asking you, Mayor Johnson, to make this into housing because we need it," said Donna Thaddeson, who grew up a few blocks away in the Abla Homes public housing community. For the last 2 years, Thaddeson said she has seen a homeless man sleeping behind her church, Bethel Mennonite Community Church, which is right next to the 23-acre site where the Chicago Fire soccer team wants to build a new training facility. "We don't need a soccer field," Thaddeson said. "We just need more housing."
Yep.
Yeah, we do. And not just there, but everywhere. The work on the site is underway. The activists said it's not too late for Johnson to stop a deal between the Chicago Housing Authority, which owns the land, and the Fire, the city's major league men's soccer team. Let's scroll down to the next picture of Laura Donaldson.
Okay. Yep.
Abla resident Laura Donaldson speaks at a prayer vigil. Located just southeast of Roosevelt Road and Ashland Avenue, the property was long reserved for housing, including homes for low-income families, but former Mayor Lori Lightfoot engineered a plan to let the Fire take it over for a substantial donation to her mayoral re-election campaign, might I add. Although she would say that's not what it was for. I think we can speculate.
Yeah, sure, Lori. Sure, Lori. That's sure that wasn't what it was for.
Under a lease agreement signed this spring, the team will pay the Housing Authority $8 million plus about $750,000 a year for at least 40 years. Abla was once home to 3,600 families, but much of the complex was demolished as part of the CHA's citywide plan for transformation, an initiative to replace old public housing with mixed-income developments. At many of its sites, the agency has failed to fulfill its promises. The CHA outlined plans to turn Abla into a new development, Roosevelt Square, with 2,441 new and 465 rehabbed units. Nearly 2 decades later, it's produced fewer than half the new homes it promised. The Fire is owned by billionaire business leader Joe Mansueto, the founder and executive director of investment research firm Morningstar. After Mansueto approached city officials about finding a site for a new team training facility, Lightfoot offered, let me repeat that, Lightfoot offered several properties owned by the CHA. I'm really happy that Block Club Chicago punctuates this with the next sentence. The fire chose the Apple site on the near west side. Mansueto later made a $25,000 donation to Lightfoot's campaign. Yep. In June,
No comment.
In June, a group of housing advocates and residents sued the CHA and the Federal Department of Housing and Urban Development in the U.S. District Court, alleging the government agencies violated federal civil rights and fair housing laws by approving the fire deal. If not stopped, 23 acres of land held in a public trust for the benefit of public and affordable housing will go to a billionaire soccer owner to build a sports, not stadium, training complex, the suit stated. A training complex is bad enough, but this is not even like a facility that I would imagine can be monetized, or they can use the claims, oh, well, it's going to bring more foot traffic to the neighborhood. It's going to bring more business to the neighborhood.
Yeah, nobody's going to come to the neighborhood to watch practice, soccer practice.
No. Without intervention by this court, the Abla land will effectively be permanently lost as a site for public or affordable housing at a time where sufficiently sized, available, properly zoned land in an opportunity or gentrifying area is increasingly scarce. The Chicago Housing Authority and the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development have declined to comment on the pending lawsuit. CHA leaders have said they still intend to build the promised housing at Abla. So they're doubling down.
Yeah.
Waiting on the lawsuit. But you know what? That's fine. Keep kicking the can, CHA. As we just saw with the AMC ruling, which a lot of people thought was a Hail Mary pass that wasn't going to result in a positive development for retail investors, this could very, very easily blow up in CHA's face, and I really do hope it does. On the campaign trail, Johnson criticized the CHA's practice of selling or leasing its land for non-housing uses, and in June, his transition report called for a freeze on those CHA land deals. Now, we're still in our honeymoon phase, Ed, right?
Yeah, although it's getting really close to the end, Jerry.
It is.
His transition report calling for a freeze. Does he mean a freeze on the deals that currently are in play, like the soccer field? We don't have details on that yet, do we?
He left it very open, and I hope for the reason of being able to address activity prior to his election rather than just new deals. Because the report goes on to say, the mayor has not weighed in on the Chicago Housing Authority's land deals, including the fire lease, since he took office in May. Spokesperson Ronnie Reese said the mayor's office couldn't comment on the deal with the fire because of the active lawsuit changing it. Now, remember, everybody, we've remarked on this before, too. Investigations, lawsuits, as much as we're anxious for information, I have no reason to disbelieve that this is a stall tactic as far as it comes to Johnson, because he's been pretty transparent about everything else. Earlier this week, Reese said that the Johnson administration is committed to, quote, creating equitable and affordable housing for all. Housing activists say the mayor could still stop the deal with the fire, even though bulldozers have started environmental remediation work at the site. They say that work would need to be done anyway to prepare for new housing. Leon Jose Bicheri, one of the pretty proud of myself. I think I pronounced that name right. Leon Jose Bicheri, one of the organizers of the Vigil Thursday, said he first met Johnson years ago and noted the mayor's progressive background with the Chicago Teachers Union. I still think he's a good guy, said Bicheri, executive director of the community group Working Family Solidarity. But Johnson needs to publicly call for an end to selling off public housing land, Bicheri said. We need Mayor Johnson to be as vocal now as he was in his election campaign.
Yeah. We've talked about the CHA doing these types of deals.
Yep.
On many episodes, I'm sure. In fact, I think we talked about it last Tuesday. Even
it's a continuing story,
and it's infuriating every time we have this story. It's like it should be a no-brainer. See, I think Shane may be just hearing about this for the first time. He's like, he can't believe this happened. Is there a reason they can't build new homes there? And isn't there somewhere else they can build their goddamn stadium?
Yes.
Great question.
Yes. First of all, no and yes. There's no reason they can't build new homes there, Shane. And yes, there are other places, or there are other existing facilities, as we mentioned, the aforementioned Soldier Field that might be vacant with the Bears bailing out Chicago. Go ahead, Ed.
Yeah, but I mean, it's like, these guys want a practice facility. They could put that anywhere.
So Shane, this isn't a stadium that they want. They want a training facility built where people can go watch the team practice. It's not even like a full stadium where, you can watch a game the way you watch any major league, baseball, football game. It's a practice facility. That's what they think. That's what they're prioritizing, as opposed to affordable housing for Chicago residents.
Yeah, and I think it's a problem with the CHA. They are clearly not realizing that there should be always a priority on getting people homes, especially people who have been waiting 3 or more decades to get them. Those homes were promised.
He's not exaggerating. Ed's not exaggerating. 2 or 3 decades, many people have been waiting for the housing that they were promised after being relocated.
So, yeah, this is, in fact, I think one of our older people was one of the people that's been still waiting.
Yeah.
Was it Jeanette Taylor? I believe. Yeah. Jeanette Taylor. Yeah. So this is, for this to continue is just incredible to me. I'm just going to breathe for a second here and soak this in, because
I don't know that there's a whole lot more we can say about it. It is what it is. It's an ongoing story we're continuing to cover. And hopefully, as these activists have presented, while the mayor has been mum due to the pending lawsuit, they believe he can still do something, even if ground has been broken for any kind of construction. So I'm hoping they're right. So moving into our next story, which I will allow Ed to bring up on screen.
Oh, okay.
Great developments for labor in Chicago. Those making subminimum wage, or at least making some wage for, the good work that they do for their employers and alleged colleagues and teammates. This comes again from Block Club Chicago. Quinn Myers reporting. Mayor and alder people introduce an ordinance to end the subminimum wage for tipped workers in Chicago. The measure would guarantee tipped workers get the same city hourly rate as other workers do, with tips paid out on top of that. Of course, one business group called the proposal tone deaf. One business group called it tone deaf. I can imagine another business group here in Chicago calling the establishment of a worker-owned co-op so that all the people working for free can actually have a stake in their work tone deaf as well. But I'm just speculating.
I can guess what the business group is, but
yeah. Or you know what? Businessman, alleged useless businessman. Okay.
Well, it's there's more than one organization with the letters NRA, is all I'm saying.
An effort to end the subminimum wage for tipped workers in Chicago was introduced to City Council with backing from Mayor Brandon Johnson and several alderpeople, although it was at least temporarily delayed Wednesday by a parliamentary maneuver. Do we have something on the Brando bingo card to X off regarding this, possibly?
Let me see. Let's see. Where do we find a Brandon bingo card, Jerry? We can find one at ChicagoCornerTV.com.
I'm going to continue reading from the story while you look for that. My hope here, Ed, is with the potential of this moving forward, is that it's going to set a precedent not just in Chicago but everywhere for subminimum wage earners. There's our website. Yes.
Oh, hey, that's where the link is to click on to get your Brandon bingo card.
The website that Ed Heller built, the beautiful website that Ed Heller built for Chicago Corner in lieu of some other WordPress looking crap other people proposed. I got to get my digs in, Ed. I mean, it's just shot in front, you know?
No, Wix looking crap is what it was.
Wix looking crap, right.
Yeah, the WordPress stuff's good if you have someone who's good at setting up websites, because it's a lot more flexible.
And if they're hate watching, you know it's true. All right, so Brandon Bingo, let's see where the potential of this ordinance might play in here. We got.
Well, I don't know if I added anything like this. I mean, would it be undoing a Lightfoot policy? We've already checked that.
Well, it's not a Lightfoot policy, subminimum wage. That's true.
You know, I don't know if I really have wages on here. I got funding public schools. I got fixing the CTA schedule. I got firing Dorval Carter. Food access equity. See, some of these are. It's like some of these are in progress. So, but we can't really put an X on them yet.
We can't change things yet. Yeah. Although plow the sidewalks is coming soon. We saw a development on that. Although I don't have coverage on that tonight. Maybe when it happens.
So I can't really do that yet.
Not yet.
But that one we'll be able to check off at least in winter, I guess.
Yeah.
For some of the city anyway, they're not doing the entire city this time around, which I think is ridiculous. They really got to do a study. It's like figure out how much it costs, figure out how much the city has to spend.
Yep.
Then dig it out of all the TIF fund, slush fund money that so many people in the city say that doesn't exist, and take care of it. Yeah, public banking, I don't know if that's happening. Probably not. We still don't know if he's going to eat Chicago pizza. I imagine he's done it, but I have no evidence yet. We're hoping to get someone from Brandon Johnson's administration on the show eventually, and maybe we can find out if he has.
Kira's trying to make that happen, so fingers crossed. Let me get back to the article, though, because Joe's going to be joining us soon. Chicago's minimum wage for most workers as of July 1st is $15.80 an hour. The tipped workers, like restaurant servers across the city, are paid a sub-minimum wage, a base pay, that ranges from $9. Can you believe this in this day and age? $9 an hour for employees at smaller companies to $9.48 for those at larger ones, bolstered by on-the-job tips, which patrons are not obligated to give.
Yeah,
that's how the restaurant owners get off with not paying. Oh, well, you'll get it from your tips, and if they don't, they starve the workers.
And there's other shenanigans that goes on with tips at restaurants too. I hear things like how they have to pool wages with everybody, and I'm like, okay, I understand that, because you got back of house workers and other people who aren't getting a share of those tips, and they were somewhat responsible also for those people's meals. Or managing, taking care of the whole restaurant environment. But also then there's some dirty restaurants out there where they don't let you have your tips. And I'm like, that's not cool.
I've heard instances said that even when you go into like a regular chain restaurant, like a Subway, there are tip cups on the counter. And then when you sign, if you charge your meal, there's a space for the tip on a Subway bill, or if you go to another fast food place. I've asked the people behind the desk. I'm like, are you getting the tip, or are they just putting this on to milk more money? And more often than less, I do hear the people behind the counter claiming, they are giving us the tips. But always ask, because you don't know if that's just big franchise restaurant chain owners taking advantage of this tip mentality, whereby
it's getting a little crazy. More. And I think I mentioned it before, like that Casa Bonita with Matt and Trey, they bought that restaurant, and they're transitioning away from tips, but they're going to pay their workers $30 an hour, which is great. I wish more restaurants would start doing that. Hopefully. I don't know how it's going to affect the, how much things cost and stuff, but everybody's got to make adjustments in this new economy, and you figure it out.
and hopefully this might, help jumpstart that. The ordinance introduced Wednesday would upend that system by guaranteeing workers citywide get the same hourly rate of $15.80 with any tips paid out on top. If passed by City Council in its current form, the lower wage could be phased out over the next 2 years. Businesses would be required to meet the new pay requirements by July 1st of 2025, according to the ordinance. Supporters argue the current system exposes tipped workers to disproportionate levels of poverty, financial uncertainty, and harassment, according to a copy of the ordinance reviewed by Block Club. Organizers with One Fair Wage have been advocating to implement the higher hourly pay for service industry workers. Alder People in Johnson said Wednesday a change is needed to support service industry workers, many of whom are people of color or young people. At a pre-council press conference Wednesday, Alderman Jesse Fuentes of the 26 said the subminimum wage practice is rooted in slave labor, white supremacy, and racism. He's not holding back. Quote, "We know that when our women are the front lines and they're servicing for tips, that they are subject to sexual harassment. We know that when they're putting their bodies and health at risk, they are subject to discrimination. We have a moral obligation to make our people whole," she said. And there's a photo of her. Yeah, there with. Actually, scroll down. It's another photo of.
Sorry, I was in the other page.
Okay. Alderwoman Fuentes with Alderman David Moore and Alderman Vasquez. But while the measure was formally introduced Wednesday, Alderman Anthony Beale of the 9th sent the ordinance to the Council's Rules Committee, where legislation is typically deflected, to hold it up or kill it entirely. Fuentes and co-sponsor Carlos Ramirez Rosa of the 35th said after the meeting they are confident the ordinance will pass through the Council this fall. The full City Council does not meet in August. The proposal comes as Chicago restaurants have struggled to maintain staff since reopening after COVID-19 shutdowns. The pandemic drove thousands of skilled workers into other industries, restaurateurs told Block Club last summer. In a statement posted to social media, Hospitality Business Association of Chicago Director Pat Dwar sharply criticized the tip wage ordinance, calling it tone deaf. Quote, "Coming out of 2 years of sharply reduced business due to City Hall COVID mitigations, increased revenue pressures from sky-high food delivery app fees, and climbing product costs and property tax bills, it's hard to imagine a more tone-deaf, fast-track proposal from Chicago City Council," the statement reads. Ed, do you know that there are still pandemic relief grants being awarded primarily to the restaurant industry in Chicago?
And also forgiven, basically. They started out as loans and then they basically became grants. I wish I had that kind of cash that I could get to pay off like all of the money that I lost during the lockdown.
Now, I am not suggesting that all businesses, including restaurants, shouldn't have been awarded grants or given low-interest loans to survive the pandemic. I'm not suggesting that at all. Everybody should have gotten a fair shake. But it seems that the restaurant industry has been getting the lion's share and continues to get more grants, loans beyond regular businesses throughout the rest of the city. And, I think we're kind of past the pandemic now. Everybody's reopened. As a small business owner that's not related to the restaurant industry, my sales suffered with my online retail business. I'm not getting any other bailouts now that life's more or less returned to normal. And people are going out. People are going to stores. People are going to restaurants. I go up and down the street here in my neighborhood or, even near Lincoln Square. And I'm telling you, restaurants have pretty much resumed to normal attendance levels.
I can't speak to that because I'm still pretty broke, so I don't get to go out as often as I'd like to. But I could say that the restaurant industry they've always had kind of a shaky business model as far as paying their employees and workers, and so if this is a situation where, and not everybody's going to agree with me here, where the federal government has to step in and say, look, we're going to help you transition to a regular living wage without tips anymore, while you figure out how to redo your restaurant business model without paying substandard wages. And I'd be fine with that, because this is one of those things where when restaurants and small businesses keep giving more money to their employees will spend it locally. They will support local economies. And that just puts money back into the system.
They'll be able to pay their bills and actually eat themselves. Not eat themselves.
I mean, while they're saying, "Oh, it's going to end up costing $40 for a cheeseburger," look,
no,
dude.
It's not. That's
I mean, restaurants are going to take advantage of those price hikes anytime they can, even when the cost of ingredients and labor potentially goes down. So,
and Ed, isn't it interesting? We've remarked on this before. When CEOs of these big, franchise operations, restaurants, McDonald's, when their CEOs get their $1 billion bonuses, I don't see the price of hamburgers going up. Never happens there. Only when you want to give a minimum wage.
That's always the thing, especially with the corporation, the food corporations. They always cry poor, and it's ridiculous.
Well, let me wrap up this article real quick just to get to the point regarding the elder people. Johnson, Fuentes, and other elder people have vigorously defended the measure. The mayor, Fuentes, and Ramirez Rosa donned aprons last week as part of a Server for an Hour event organized by the group during the Progressive Political Conference Netroots Nation. Quote, because of subminimum wages, many of our young people are working full-time and still find themselves living in poverty, Johnson said during a keynote speech at the event. Excuse me. People are working hard every single day, and they cannot afford to live in the very city in which they work. Unquote. So let's keep our fingers crossed that ordinance is taken out of committee and put into action. Because you know what, Ed, if I got to pay an extra $1 for my meal somewhere to help cover this, I have no problem with that. I really don't. Nor should anyone else. We called them the frontline workers delivering food to us when no one could leave their houses, the essential workers. And now nobody wants to recognize that, they're still essential and they're still.
Well, they're wanting everyone to go back to sleep when the truth is that people aren't going to go back to sleep. They understand the value of their labor. That's not going away. In fact, we know that it's ramping up. Really, we're starting to see more workers in other industries start to realize it too. UPS is on the verge of a strike nationwide. Worldwide? Is it nationwide? I don't know.
Nationwide. Well, I don't know about worldwide. But
then we got the writers and the actors. There's a number of different organizations that are organizing or preparing to strike, depending on labor conditions or wages and whatever. And look, everybody just needs a roof over their head. They need to be able to make ends meet. It's not too much to ask.
And for
we
critics,
just got to figure out how to make it happen, right?
Sorry, I thought you'd finished your thought. Didn't mean to interrupt. For critics claiming that this is about employees who are lazy, that don't want to go back to work, and they're greedy. No, they just realized what the value of their labor was. Does that sound familiar, Ed? That they were giving away for next to nothing or for free, as opposed to what the cost of living and what their expenses are to survive. So, the pandemic was a real wake-up call when the federal government was providing unemployment at the rate that people should be earning on the job. People are like, wow, I'm grateful. This is a lot of money. And, they suddenly realize that's what they should be getting paid when they're at work, not when they're out of work, as far as the guidelines for unemployment was concerned with levels that were issued. So listen, we're on from this story. I want to share a remarkable story about a remarkable individual that we're going to have on next as our guest. I want to read from the story that was shared with us by Shane Coughlin, our friend at KRTD Media, regarding our friend, Joe Evans, who I've done a few panels with, and who I don't know if he's still doing his program. I didn't get a chance to see, given his current living circumstances. But Joe Evans, also known as Idaho Joe, is running for city council in Boise, Idaho. Now, this comes from...
No, he's running for mayor, Jerry.
I'm sorry, mayor. What did I just say?
You said, well, he was running for city council.
He was running for city council. I was looking at the headline as I was speaking. Thank you for the correction. Out of Boise, Idaho, Joe Evans drops city council race, pivots to run for mayor. And we're going to hear, in his own words, why this is interesting, extraordinary, and inspirational. This comes from Margaret Carmel at the Boise DEV senior reporter. A third candidate has joined the Boise mayor's race. Joe Evans, who previously filed to run for District 3, is now shifting tactics to run against Mayor Lauren McLean. He said he made the decision to pivot due to his concerns about the newly passed zoning code rewrite, pushing low-income Boiseans out of their homes, as well as how both McLean and her other opponent, Mike Masterson, have handled issues related to policing. Evans was also recently given a notice that his lease at his affordably priced Boise Bench apartment on Philippi Street was terminated, along with other residents in his complex. Because of the close proximity to receiving his notice to the passage of the zoning code rewrite, he believes this signals the owner of the complex intends to demolish his home and redevelop it now that the city has increased density allowed on certain parcels through its zoning code rewrite. By moving to the mayor's race, Evans said he also gets the advantage of not being limited to living in one district while he searches for a new affordable place to live. The timing could have been coincidental, but the fact it came so shortly after the upzone, while Verify Property Management is going through the process of limiting leases to a specific time frame and insisting tenants go month to month, is an indication that already had that apartment complex targeted for demolition, he said. That's just supposition. I don't have proof. After the publication of this story, Verity Property Management President Robert Felix reached out to Boise Dev to say Evans' comments were completely false and without merit. The owner of the property is not intending to demolish the property and redevelop it, Felix wrote. Verity Property Management is not limiting leases to a specific time frame, or are we insisting tenants go month to month? There also is no indication they already had the apartment complex targeted for demolition. The zoning rewrite has provisions requiring any property that was affordably rented, no matter if it used public assistance or not, to go through the conditional use permit process. If it would be demolishing existing housing units, if Evans complex is redeveloped, it will require this special process and notification. Evans has formerly run for statewide offices as a libertarian and was a lead organizer of the failed ballot initiative related to legalizing medicinal marijuana. Evans told Boise Dev earlier this week he supports the concept of mixed-use development, especially affordably priced city-developed complexes to keep sprawl down and families close to services. But he says the zoning code did not do enough to keep existing older homes and apartment complexes safe from redevelopment as the city grows. Evans says the code should focus on protecting existing units from being redeveloped before there are enough new homes for people to move into. When asked how the city could legally block some private property owners from developing on their land, Evans said the city could have tried options like implementing the increased housing density in stages to allow some parts of the city to develop faster than others and leaving lower income areas until last. I have no perfect solution, he said. I just know right now we're looking at an issue where there's displacement that is going to occur in that range between the 70% and 100% of median income that wasn't there before. And he's also proposing a change on homeless policy. Evans said he wants to take a different tactic than both McLean and Masterson on addressing homelessness. One of the policies Evans would hope to see to help address homelessness would be to create designated camping areas in the city for the community to stay and have access to services. He said this could occur in city parks. Yes, it's inconvenient for an awful lot of people who feel like the entirety of our parks and green spaces belong to the housed community, but that's not where we are in Boise right now, and it's not a place we'll be soon until we can get the housing crisis dealt with. This kind of echoes what we're dealing with here in Chicago, not only with our homeless population, Ed, but with the migrant crisis. Right, finding affordable or even housing to begin with for them. He was highly, and rightfully so, he was highly critical of Boise's previous policy of ticketing people in the homeless community for sleeping outside, which began while David Beater was mayor and Masterson ran the Boise Police Department. The policy was eventually found unconstitutional by the Ninth Circuit of Appeals and reached a settlement where the city of Boise adopted a new policy to only ticket members of the homeless community if the shelters were full or there was not a bed available that they could use. Evans said Masterson's involvement in enforcing the unconstitutional ticketing policy makes him unfit to run the city at a time he anticipates the rise in homelessness due to the zoning code rewrite. And on the other hand, Evans was also critical of McLean's handling of the application for Interfaith Sanctuary to move to a larger shelter on State Street. He said her administration needed to do more to cut red tape on the application and hasten its approval instead of letting the process take more than a year. He said the city needs to do more to ensure if IFS or other or any other homeless shelters need to expand, it could be approved more easily without such a lengthy public process. So I wanted to give our viewing audience locally as well as nationally some background and perspective on what's happening in Boise, Idaho that have inspired Mr. Evans to run. But without further ado, I am welcoming to our stream now Mr. Idaho Joe. Idaho Joe, welcome.
Thank you, Jerry. That was a fantastic intro. I really do appreciate it. And Margaret did an amazing job on that article. And she is right. There is a certain amount of supposition. There is a certain amount of, personal analysis that went into that places, a degree of allegations that may not be properly founded in the owners of the company. However, this is still a problem. We are still looking at displacement of a number of people in order to facilitate what is basically turned into a gentrification project for the city of Boise. We're currently at about 250,000 people for the city proper itself, with the greater Boise metro area closing in on over 1 million people right now. And where Boise, being the most populous city in the state, leads, the rest of the state follows. So what we see happening here in Boise is what we're going to see happening in the rest of the state and the rest of the valley, in what is basically the suburbs. So these are all big issues that we need to take a look at moving forward. As you and Ed were talking about earlier, we're looking at the fallout from COVID relief, what that represents for current employment across the state, what it represents for employment across the nation. Chicago's not the only area that runs into this particular problem. We're seeing these issues develop here in Boise and in the other areas as well. We're seeing more and more money that was basically printed free, coming from the federal government, that's filling government coffers to pay for services, that don't really meet the needs of the people. And we haven't created the opportunities for the people to pull themselves up the way that we have in previous eras. We're looking at more and more, it used to be called Hoovervilles, the homeless shelter camps, the places where they all come in to, set up because it's safer in groups or in communities. They're able to provide mutual support in a lot of these cases. And then we turn around and, even back during Hoover's time, there were the police. They would go and rouse these camps. They developed their own rules, their own set of laws, their own ability to self-moderate, keep security. But this was because of the rampant homelessness that we were dealing with in, the Dust Bowl era. That era between World War I and World War II. And here we are going through it all over again.
Well, it is a nation. Look, the homeless crisis is a nationwide crisis.
Oh, yeah.
And as we can see, you're not shy about sharing. It appears that you are broadcasting to us from your home office, where you are right now. But I failed to mention before I introduced you, Ed. I'm sorry, Joe. In your introduction, I wanted to give some people a little bit more background on you, as I found from your bio, before we continue, so people can really understand your experience and where you're coming from. You're very well spoken on what we're discussing here too. Joe was born in San Angelo, Texas. He served in the United States Army from 1994 to 2013. He's been associated with the Green Party and the Libertarian Party. Evans' career experience includes working as a data engineer. He also has experience working in the nonprofit sector. He earned a bachelor's degree in 2015 and 2017, both from Boise State University. And I would imagine, is that in data engineering or another skill that you're?
Well, the first major was general studies, sort of a generic. And I picked up a minor in sustainability during that one. And then the next degree was in information technology management, which is where you look at the data engineering, the computer. And it's interesting because Boise State University, that's part of their supply chain management course in their business education. So my information technology management major is a bachelor's in business administration. with a lot of parallels in supply chain management. Welcome UPS and Vanguard and BlackRock and all their investments in trains and UPS and all of that fun stuff. So, yeah. But my time in the military, 4 tours in the sandbox during our great war on terror, which turned into a complete joke there towards the end. Did 3 in Afghanistan, 1 in Iraq. Little time in the Philippines for support for some special operations there. And a lot of that actually introduced me to an awful lot of the cultural awareness of different cultures around the world. And it was funny because I come back to Boise after the military, and it was something that I hadn't really noticed while I was gone. But ever since 1970, Boise has been one of the highest per capita rates of integration for refugees through the International Rescue Committee and certain other organizations for refugees around the world. We speak 90 different languages here in Boise, almost every one of them from a refugee country around the world. Wow. Somali, Nepalese, Tagalog, Thai. We have refugee-owned restaurants that specialize in everything from African to Asian, specific cuisines. I mean, the incredible diversity that we have here, and it's also been put at risk because of our current process of gentrification, as well as what one of the other issues we're dealing with right now is the rise of nativism here in the United States. The idea that we don't want refugees here, which is based on bad information. It's based on a theory of hate that has no basis in science, no basis in the statistics, no basis in the facts of what refugees and immigrants represent to the American economy.
They built this country. They were responsible. We talk about, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but just to kind of like insert this here. It's amazing that when we consider the fact that most migrants of the 20s and 30s were welcomed and encouraged to come because they had a lot to do with, along with our native populations and also Asian influx and African-American population, with building our country's infrastructure. But once the infrastructure was done, we don't want anybody anymore because the work was done for all the big companies to like make sure everything's fine for, the status quo. So this attitude now that's anti-immigrant, anti-migrant, it's like people lose sight of the fact that they provide labor to big companies that don't want to pay regular Americans a fair living wage. I mean, these migrants should be getting paid more, but we rely on them. So many people look past the fact that we are relying on them for our agricultural sector, for so much of the other service-related infrastructure of this country. When I hear people, whining, oh, they're going to take our jobs probably you wouldn't want to take because they won't pay you a standard of living, number one, and number two, it's some of the most back-breaking work that nobody else wants to do. Just as a little bit of an aside. So, but please continue speaking to. I just want to punctuate.
And that's a very real issue. DeSantis went through the process, and he's dealing with the fallout from his anti-immigration bill. Immigrants basically walked off job sites. They're not working there. They just picked up and left. So there's construction jobs that are left stagnant. Housing, that big issue we're having with housing because of the way he decided to handle the immigrant crisis in Florida, all of that housing for all of those people who wanted to move to Florida because DeSantis invited them and he was going to turn it into an immigrant-free paradise. All of those houses that were being built for all of those new people are now sitting there unfinished, incomplete. The crops, orange crops, agriculture, it's dead.
They need to focus their anger on the companies and businesses that don't want to pay anybody a fair living wage, not those that are taking the jobs that need to be done and basically acting as indentured servants.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that we see running all across the United States right now. Red states are particularly bad about it. And it's one of those interesting things because despite the fact that Idaho is a very red state, Boise's a very blue bubble within this red state. And it still has always managed to present this friendly atmosphere towards our immigrants, towards people who come in. Now, the thing is with Idaho, we actually have two areas for immigrants to come and settle. One is right here in Boise, where they integrate into the culture, become part of, the larger community. And a lot of them have also settled in eastern Idaho, where a lot of them become agricultural workers. They become invested in the agricultural process and the agricultural businesses. We got a dairy out east, major one. He's been invested heavily in making sure that a lot of the immigrants are involved in the dairy industry, in agricultural processes, to make sure that his products coming out of Idaho remain consistent and high quality. And we're seeing more and more third generation, fourth generation former migrant workers that have settled in Idaho take over the responsibility of agricultural production. Used to be Idaho was dominated by what I call white farmers. It was the upper class that moved in here after the fall of the South during the Revolutionary War. They all moved in from Missouri and settled in, and their children have given up the agriculture. But the children of the immigrant workers that were working the farms, they've taken on the role of our agricultural production in the state. They now own the farms, they run the farms, they manage and produce our agricultural products here. They work with the major companies, and we continue to see more and more denigration of what, the immigrants, the people who helped us build what we are today. We see more and more people saying we don't want them here. And again, it's like you called it out. It's a certain amount of hypocrisy. Well, it's like we wanted you while you were building it for us, but now that you build it for us, we want you gone. For
next to nothing. Yeah. Well, on land that we stole from the native indigenous population to begin with.
Yeah. And it doesn't work that way. We don't have the skills to replace them when they leave. Yeah. We lost an entire generation because, unfortunately, unions froze out an entire generation of trade workers. Yeah. We spent 20, 30 years where nobody left the union, and the union didn't train any new tradesmen. Not in a meaningful way. You didn't get into the union unless you were a friend of someone who was in the union already.
Or family.
Mm-hmm. Or family. And most of them were telling their kids, go to college, son. You don't want to be working in the trades. You don't want to be a welder. Go get a business degree. Go get that master's of business. Go get that MBA. An awful lot of those kids that were sons of union workers, daughters of union workers that went and got that MBA are kicking themselves right now.
I want to shift gears for a moment.
Yeah.
What you're addressing here, though, with labor and the segments of society we value, and certainly you've got, I think, an impressive educational background in addition to being a veteran. And I want to talk a little bit, or I want you to share a little bit about your experience as one of these, I think, marginalized populations, along with homeless people, along with migrants, as a veteran. I mean, you served this country, and you now find yourself in a situation that nobody should find themselves in, let alone a veteran. Evicted because of this situation with the apartment complex that you were living in, living homeless right now.
Yeah.
I mean, it's extraordinary to imagine that you can take on the insurmountable efforts to run a campaign, given, I don't want to say a lack of resources, but the challenge of resources. So can you share with us a little bit of your experience and perspective as a veteran, having served this country and what you see in Boise and your own experiences trying to make change, libertarian through the Green Party, as a, I would say, how would you define yourself, Joe? A civil advocate, a civic advocate?
Right now, one of my biggest self-descriptions is patient advocate,
Okay.
but it really is about civil rights. It's about civics. It's about being part of the government process, teaching people to be part of the government process so that they can become part of that political power. They are the power. The people are the power. And they need to know that they can take that power back from the people who have, stolen it from them. We have ways and means to reintegrate into the political power that writes the rules by which we live by. And we don't have to accept the rules that a relatively small group of people have decided applies to us.
Well,
that means
rules apply to them. Well, different rules apply to them.
Yes, well, different rules apply to them, and we see it all the time. The number of times that a senator will write a law because he believes it should be, and then you find out later that he's been breaking the law ever since it was written.
Inside trading.
Insider trading, exactly. And a number of these other things. But a lot of it is those of us who, at one time, and this is problematic because there's an awful lot of young people who are anti-war activists. And we see more and more of it coming with Ukraine and Russia. They can't decide whether or not they're supposed to fight the good fight or even what the good fight is or who the good guy in this scenario is. Because we have Americans trading one side. We have the Russians who've been our traditional enemy since forever. Where is the propaganda? Where is the lie? Whose propaganda is it that sustains our personal beliefs in what's going on? But we still see anti-war activists. We still see peace activists, and they want peace on our planet.
Well, everyone does, not just the advocates. And we've got the Russians as the convenient boogeymen that are constantly trotted out when we, most people don't fail to acknowledge the fact that Ukraine is on Russia's front doorstep. Unlike Cuba, that was in our backyard, that we wouldn't tolerate taking missiles back in the 1960s during the Cuban Missile Crisis, nor could you imagine if Mexico or Canada decided to do something against our sovereignty. We wouldn't tolerate it. I mean, I can't condone the escalation of this conflict or the war as Putin has done, but it's like the guy had no choice. You got NATO and you got everyone against him, and everybody going pro-Ukraine is failing to acknowledge the fact that we've been messing with Russia's rights and in that part of the world forever, specifically for American business interests as they relate to gas, oil, resources in that region. And because Russians bad, commie this, commie that. It's like it's so much more complicated than that. And as you speak of the way they divide us, not looking at those at the top who know how to divide us, whether it's us against migrants, us against the homeless, us against the Russians, while they sit on their fat asses and continue to get rich, while the rest of us are arguing with each other, not realizing our enemies at the top, not against each other.
Yeah, and that's it. One of the problems I had as a peace activist when I first got out was the idea that I'd go to these groups and I'd end up meeting people who had never been to war, who had never enlisted, never served. And they're going, well, you were part of the machine, so we can't trust you. What do you know about peace? You were a killer. You were part of the machine. You were part of the empire. What makes you qualified to be a rebel now? And it's like,
you've got the best experience to help because how things are going on the inside. What lack of insight or wisdom goes along.
And it really is. But there is that belief that they come forward with. And it's like, I don't want you as part of our organization. I don't want people learning from you because of your past association. And it's like, there's nobody better than me to teach your people about how the machine works. About how to disable it. And it's one of those things about coming back and taking a look at what was going on in our war parties. Whether it was the Democrats, whether it was the Republicans, every one of them supported, whether they were in the House, whether they were in the Senate, whether they were in the executive administration, Republicans and Democrats supported the war on terror for a full 20 years.
Yeah.
Okay? You can't look at the Republicans and Democrats as peace, as parties of peace. Not like we could 40 years ago when it was, or 60 years ago when it was JFK sitting in the White House, when we were dealing with Bay of Pigs.
Much more clear.
We've had LBJ, Nixon, Ford, even Carter got involved in an occasional Bush war, but Reagan, Daddy Bush, Clinton, Baby Bush, we've been at war the entire time. Every party has been at the helm during a wartime crisis here in the United States. And we have people saying, but the Democrats are going to bring peace, or no, dude.
No.
Yeah.
No.
If you want peace, you can't be voting for a Democrat. You can't be voting for a Republican.
Ed has defined very well, Ed, the kayfabe duopoly.
Yeah, that's what I've been calling it, because every year it gets more clearer for me that really all they're doing is it's like a WWE wrestling match between Money Red and Money Blue, and it's performance. All they're doing is
it's performance art. It's always been performance art, and if we've watched the bill for that performance art get bigger every 4 years. It's an industry. The politics is an industry. How much can you raise? How much are you paying the people that are involved in making sure the industry continues to exist in its current state?
Speaking of that, Joe, I want to ask you, how, pivoting back to your mayoral campaign, and we could go forever, and I'm putting no limit on this interview because you are a very, very well-informed individual, and we can learn so much more beyond just talking about your bid for the mayor's race there in Boise. But when you talk about that element, the money that has to be raised to run for office, how are you finding it with your circumstances? Is the local community taking you seriously and recognizing your value from your experience and what's preceded you? I know that you wanted to run for city council. I think that may have been impacted by the fact you didn't have a regular physical address anymore. Can you?
Well, and that's one of the things. The state of the physical address isn't such a big thing because we do have a arrangement here that all I need to do is check into one of the homeless shelters for a couple nights, and that becomes my new permanent address. That becomes a place I can have my mail sent to. That becomes a place of residence, despite the fact that they have temporary arrangements. You can only be there for a specific period of time. So as far as that aspect of it goes, it's not the lack of a physical address. And when it comes to being truly homeless, I'm not homeless in the sense that an awful lot of the homeless are. So on that front, I don't suffer the same degree of issues that a lot of the people who are homeless deal with as far as stress factors, their ability to make sure they get proper nutrition, proper rest. I got a minivan, nice little setup in the back, get good sleep every night. Got a friend who lets me park, friends, rotating driveways, get a park, crash for the night. Every so often I run over, I make sure that I get set up in with the services that I'm supposed to be as a disabled homeless vet, make sure I talk to the proper counselors who are going to facilitate all of that for me.
I didn't know you were disabled also.
30%, which is one of those, it's sort of, and a lot of that has to do with kidney cancer that I survived. So that gives me the qualification, despite the fact that 30% isn't one of those amounts that warrants a great deal, but at the same time, it is still one of my qualifiers. But even during all of this, I am currently what's called employed homeless. I have a job.
Oh, we lost him.
We lost the connection. I'm sure he'll be back
shortly.
He may have had
he's on a mobile device, so I'm not shocked by that.
Well, let's share his Twitter feed until he can.
His Twitter account is at IDJoe4Idaho, and his banner says "The realist adjusts the sail." I'm not sure what that means. Maybe he can explain that to us when he gets back on.
I'm really interested in hearing how. I mean, look, the guy has got it together as far as knowing how to put a strategy and a plan together. As far as we always hear and talk about the fact that candidates need to raise money to run to get visibility. One of the things I told Shane when he told me Joe was running, I said, well, we're a little show, but if it helps, let's have him come on the program and interview him and share his story. And he can share, this segment on his social media feeds, to maybe get the attention of more media to what's happening there in Boise and what he's trying to do to make a change, make a difference there, despite, the challenges he's facing.
Yeah, I was looking at a linked article from the story that you were reading from, Jerry, because I wanted to see who his competitors are in Boise, and he's going up against the incumbent mayor Lauren McLean, and also the other candidate is Boise Police Chief Mike Masterson. So that makes sense as to why he might be wanting to challenge this, because it looks like Lauren McLean is basically doing incrementalism in the things she's working on. Doesn't necessarily mean that she doesn't mean well, but I'm just going to quote from the article here. It says, in a recent interview, McLean said she wanted another term to continue work on projects she began, like building 1,250 units of affordable housing through the city's land trust, increasing the percentage of Boiseans with a 10-minute walk to a park from 70% to as close as 100% as possible. I'm not sure what that means. And attracting growth in industries to support Micron's planned $15 billion expansion. So, I mean, I don't know how much she's really focusing on the potential homeless crisis that they have in Boise. I don't know how bad it is compared to other places, but we're dealing with it everywhere, and it sounds to me like he's gonna be on the side of getting people homes and making things right for the people of Boise, and the concern was about his concern was about what do they call it? What is it called when they gentrifying areas of Boise?
Yeah, well, putting out. They don't provide solutions to provide affordable housing. They drive everybody out, as in the situation with the redevelopment of his apartment complex.
It destroys neighborhoods because people get priced out of their own neighborhoods.
Yeah.
And that's never a good thing, because that it changes the I don't know. My brain is not working here. It changes what the makeup of your city is and how everybody knows Boise. So if you're in Boise and you've been living there for decades, all of a sudden the gentrification is basically taking all the flavor out of your city. It's like fruit stripe.
The diversity. I mean,
there's
such a rush to get rid of diversity. When you put in, let's be frank here, when you put in the housing that's not affordable, you're clearly attracting a different type of renter. Yeah, educated, successful, that can afford that. But that is completely dismissing those with other skills and other jobs and other careers that should also occupy that community, that are just as valuable and provide the type of diversity and makeup of the neighborhood. He's returned.
Let's see if we. Let me get him back on.
Yeah.
There you are.
I had to switch to my alternate office here.
Okay. We were able to cover some time talking a little bit about your challengers and the situation there with the gentrification. But I don't know where you want to pick up from. I'm sorry that we lost the signal with you.
Yeah. So I part of it is the challenges with the gentrification is you're trying to work with a situation that's in development. You know, things are moving fast. We're a city that's growing by leaps and bounds. We want to be able to bring people in. We want to be able to do the growth. The city went through a process where they had to revamp a 50-year-old zoning code. Now, mind you, when this zoning code was implemented, we actually had rules on lots of land in Boise that allowed an exemption, well, a requirement, that you could not sell certain plots to black people. Wow. That's how old our zoning code was. We still have deeds that are said, this property cannot be sold to a black person.
Unbelievable.
That's amazing that something like that still exists.
This is how long it's been since we last gone through the rewrite.
People don't believe that this kind of stuff still exists anywhere. Well, because it's not where they are. They think, oh, this doesn't happen elsewhere. It does. It pervades other places they're not aware of.
Thing is I've been here 50 years. You know, I didn't know that this existed, that this was still part of who we are, you know, as a state, as a development, you know, what was going on with the people in our situation, what properties they were allowed to own, you know, that this still existed. Yes, we had the Supreme Court that meant that that little qualifier in the deed, you know, was null and void, but the qualifier still existed. Yep. So this is what we were looking at with the upzone. Okay. We needed to increase the density in the city in order to improve livability conditions, in order to provide more housing for people. We needed more density. So, and this is one of those things Margaret and I talked about. You know, am I against growth? No, I'm not. I want to see the greater density. I want to be able to see the new homes. You know, so we're looking at a process of, you know, making the upgrades, providing the opportunity, building, you know, the taller buildings, creating the opportunities for families with starter, you know, positions that aren't necessarily houses, as in single family dwellings, but creating opportunities where we're looking at more like condos, right, or cooperative apartment complexes where it's owner occupied, as opposed to our current situation where a third of the United States is living in rental properties.
And the real estate industry is buying up all the rest of the property so they could, you know, basically force everyone to live in a rental economy that they can't afford a home.
Yeah. You know, and these are things that we continue to deal with, you know, trying to do my best here to make sure that, there we go.
Oh, you're good. Let me ask you, as an independent candidate, my earlier question I had, obviously, Boise Dev is taking you seriously. Are other media sources or media outlets there in Boise taking you seriously? And you know, I think so much of your run and why you're so valuable is shines through in like the circumstances that you're not letting prevent you from advocating and being a voice for those that have no voice. How is the local media treating your run besides Boise Dev?
The local media is actually treating me fairly good, everything considered. You know, we look at the situation that's going on, you know, around Boise. And the beautiful thing is the city seat, the mayor seat, it's an at-large. So there's no need for a political affiliation in order to run for it. So running as an independent, well, we're all independents. Okay, there's not going to be a D or an R after our names on the ballot. So we all get the same opportunity. We're all created equal in the eyes of the ballot box. You know, but as an activist, someone who's been involved in what's going on in the Treasure Valley and Boise, working with medical cannabis legalization, being an advocate for patient rights, particularly right to try, with regards to children, with regards to adults, with regards to people who need access to different or alternative forms of medicine. People have seen me around. Margaret has been aware of me, you know, SDev, and of course she's been extremely good across the board as far as the political issues go. Several of the others reporters I've interacted with as a libertarian. I've interacted with as an activist, whether it was for peace, whether it was for, just about anything else that was going on in the community. I've talked to them on a number of issues. So it's not like I'm a stranger to the local media. It's just interesting for them to see me actually run as a candidate, in a situation where I actually stand a chance to win, where I'm not involved in a third party. I'm actually part of the mainstream approach to what's going on with the situation. But one of the things you talked about earlier was, the money.
That's what I was saying. Yeah. So you don't have to worry. It doesn't seem that that's as much a factor that other candidates face in most races to be able to get the prominence and visibility to get your messaging out and get people to pay attention to what you bring to the table.
Yeah, and that's one of the beautiful things about what goes on here is it's a small enough city. I can do the door knocking. I can make the events. I can do the tabling. I can do the shaking of hands. I can do the holding of babies, and all of that stuff without needing a lot of money in order to do it. And because of my activism, I'm still at the front of things. I'm still involved in signature gathering for petitions. I'm still involved in activism, on the steps supporting women's reproductive rights, which is a challenge here in the state of Idaho. So I don't have to worry about the media not taking me serious. When I sit down, we have conversations, very much like you and I are having right now, Jerry, Ed. My conversations with Margaret were very much along this same thread. Where are you? What do you think about what's going on with certain situations? And of course, the beautiful thing about Margaret is Margaret's so involved in things. It's a fun conversation because she calls me out when she knows that I'm missing information or when I made an assumption based on facts I don't have access to, but she's aware of. And it's actually a really fun relationship. But that's the nature of who she is as a journalist. And it's really been amazing working with her.
Do you feel on the local circuit there outside the media attention that you're getting from Margaret and some other papers or news outlets that you're getting the respect? You're not being marginalized or discredited by other politicians there, other peoples that are others that are involved in government?
No, and honestly, I don't expect to see that being one of those things.
Can you
a
repeat
lot of
that?
the politicians
We
across
lost-
the range, Mayor McLean and I, we've had other encounters over time. We've talked in City Hall. I've talked with council members about issues, so I'm not a stranger. They're familiar with who I am. They're familiar with the things I believe and the things I want to do. Probably the biggest thing as far as transitioning from running as a libertarian candidate for, say, a congressional seat, which is my history, to transitioning to taking care of the needs of a community, on a much smaller scale. Your priorities change. The way you want to approach and solve problems changes, because I've always been more about local leadership, localized, being able to bring things closer to home, being able to do the meet and greets with the people in the place where they are at the time and place they are. So there are some shifts in the way my conversations continue to go.
I want to thank Uncle Warren, Extra Bola, digging the 3 different
Thank you, Extra Bola.
And thank you for the $2 tip there. We appreciate that.
It's definitely, it's the 3 stages here. We got 5 o'clock Shadow Jerry, me with the goatee.
I lost sound here.
And
Let
Warren
me see if
says,
I can get it back.
Yeah, and Warren says it's Joe with every hair available. So yeah, it's like the three stages really.
I normally shave for the show, but tonight I was just
There we go.
Phone call completed.
I'm fine. I'm not standing in the shower longer when I've got back pain, and this is fine. Thank you, Warren. So I'm curious, Joe, what advice do you have for anybody that might be mulling over the idea of running as independent, running for office, but just feels they're too overwhelmed by what people are normally overwhelmed by? Like, you have to raise the money. Obviously, you have to be very, very well versed in the issues to even consider. I mean, otherwise, there's no point of you running. You've got to be there for public service, not self-aggrandizement. But so you're in the neighborhood, you see bad shit going on, you see people underrepresented, you see people not represented, you see a status quo that's not paying attention to the needs of the vulnerable in your community, and you want to run. You don't know where you're going to raise the money. People don't know who you are. What advice do you give someone like that? Because I know that there are a lot of people in our viewing audience who often say, they wish they could run. They think we should run, even though we've got other commitments that we have. But what's the best advice you can give somebody who might have good intentions and have a lot to offer, but faces the challenges that an independent candidate without, I guess, huge amounts of money behind them might face? How do you get up and say, I'm going to keep doing this?
I think the biggest thing when it comes down to that is just be prepared for the long haul. Have the thing that you are passionate about. Believe in it and continue to fight for it. This isn't something that you can just walk in and you're going to solve overnight. You stick through with it. You follow through. One of the things with political candidates was, an awful lot of people say, stick with me through 3 cycles. 3 cycles. The first, the introduction. The second, where they get comfortable with you. The third, where they start to realize you're actually serious about what it is you're doing. And that's a 6-year cycle, right? That you're committing to a process of being effectively a nobody for 6 years. You need to be willing to stick through with it. You need to have people who support you and believe in you. So you don't burn out in the process. Supporting medical cannabis in the state of Idaho. That's been a 6-year process for me. For the people before me, I know people who are going on 10, 12 years trying to make that happen now. It's about the follow through, and don't let yourself get burnt out by taking it all on yourself. You have to have the network. You have to have the support. You have to believe in the people who work with you, and you need people who believe in you.
I would imagine also your platform as a live streamer, broadcaster, as well as experience as an activist. I mean, while you're doing other things to quote unquote pay the bills, this is very clearly your passion. And it only makes sense to graduate it into the next level of actually being able to provide the public service and leadership and representation beyond just talking about what's wrong, putting solutions into action.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the reasons why it was big for me to make the move to the city council run, was because this was one of those options that created, one, it gives me a level of service where I'm not dependent upon a party, where I'm not dependent upon, a philosophy or some other organization that controls what is the platform. Okay. We are able to determine for ourselves. We're able to talk to our own passions, to our own issues, and make sure that they're properly spoken to. What it is we want to do. We're not approaching it as a Republican. We're not approaching it as a Democrat or a Libertarian or even Green Party. We're approaching it as, this is the kind of leadership I want to provide my community. I want to give you the option to be heard. I want to give you the option to be housed. I want to create a safe space for those interim times when you are in transition, and be able to talk to those issues for the people and make sure that everybody understands that we want a safe world for everybody. We want a world where everybody can achieve happiness, whatever that represents to them. You know, where we create the opportunity.
Oh, I'm sure I'll be
Lost
back.
him again. Anyway, let me flip
That's
back
our
to the-
internet infrastructure, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, which is terrible. It shouldn't be like this.
No, he seems to have
Anyway,
a pretty. I mean, he's got a good connection when he's on. It's just unfortunately you'll have
Yeah.
to drop out.
yeah, I'm hoping he'll reconnect with us soon. But I went and looked up. He's got that banner on his Twitter page that says "The Realist to Justice Sale," and it's from a quote. Maybe it's a poem from William Arthur Ward, and it goes, "The pessimist complains about the wind. The optimist expects it to change. The realist adjusts the sails." So that makes sense. It's like, do stuff. You got a problem, fix it. Don't just, expect it to get fixed.
I often describe myself as either a pessimistic optimist or an optimistic pessimist. I'm going to have to add to that. I am a optimistic pessimist trying to deal with being a realist. Let's cover all bases.
Yeah, I'm a pain in the assamist. But while we're waiting for...
Joe just DM'd me on Facebook. He doesn't think he's going to make it back in.
Oh, okay.
He's you know what it is? His phone's overheating because he's been on for a while. I've had that happen with my iPhone. Not even live streaming, but if your iPhone overheats, it's going to shut down. So that's what the issue is right now. Extra Bullet is an assamist. Well, look, Joe, if you're still watching, if you want to join us, you've got the link to come back in. I did have a couple more questions, but I do think that we were able to hope. Oh, he's back. Yes.
Is he back?
Looks like he has returned.
Yes!
Well, he was here and then...
Almost dead. Dropped out again. You know what, Joe, if you're watching, give your phone a little time to cool down. And when you can relog back in, we will bring you back on to wrap up some of the other questions we had. Specifically, like where things stand right now. When's the election? What are the next steps as you continue your bid for mayor? And just stuff like that. How our audience can help. I don't know if he's got a campaign website. I know we've got that article. You don't have to live in Idaho to help Idaho Joe make a difference in Boise, and hopefully provide an example that candidates everywhere can run from. Here he is.
Is he back?
He's back. There we go. I get the phone overheating issue. We thought it was a Wi-Fi issue. I know that the battery.
Right.
Yeah. Really quickly, before we lose you again, how can our viewers help you? And when is the election? What are the next steps as you continue your bid for mayor there?
Well, the next step really is, we got events coming up. We got meet and greets, invitations to, neighborhood events. We got one coming up August 1st, neighborhood association, inviting all of the city council members for their area, the mayor candidates. But really the big issue right now is just make sure people are aware. Pay attention to what's going on. Retweet on the big issues. Comment on the concerns and things that you think the mayor and the city council candidates need to address. Whether it's specific to Idaho or whether it's just part of a national trend. We continue to see that happening all across the United States. Union work, labor, COVID, benefits that never end. The things that continue to affect our ability to survive, ability to produce, and our ability to be class mobile, to become the people that we want to be. But my next big milestone is going to be August, September. We will actually be doing the registration for the candidates. It's not enough to announce. We actually need to file the paperwork. So that's my next step. file the paperwork so that I'm on the November ballot.
Do you have a campaign website, or are you primarily keeping your campaign news on your Twitter feed?
Right now, it's mainly on the Twitter feed. I do have a domain. It has been purchased. I'm waiting to actually be able to put it online, be able to afford the hosting. So there's some things along those lines that still need to be done. You need a little bit of money, not a lot, but you still need a little bit of money to take care of some of the infrastructure for the campaign. Like your website.
Are there ways that people can donate to your campaign through your Twitter presence?
Do
you have any fundraising links set up? Because I mean, that'll certainly help get you to those next steps of infrastructure.
I mean, now you're putting me on the spot here, Jerry.
Oh, okay. Didn't mean to do that.
I am working on that as part of the process. Okay. You got to set it up with a GoFundMe. You got to find Give, Send, Go, or one of those other organizations that'll actually work with you. They want to run credit checks. Before they'll set up, this, that, or the other. So right now, and it's one of those problems. I don't even have an address for people to send a check to right now. The big thing is follow my Twitter account. Be at the events that I'm going to be at. Be where I'm going to be. Meet with me. Talk with me.
Share your Twitter feed with others. The best thing everybody can do if you can't donate is just help spread the word. Anybody out there, follow Joe on Twitter, follow his tweets, share his Twitter with your friends in Idaho there, in Boise, in that area, so that you can build a groundswell of support for Joe's campaign and hopeful victory there.
Thank you, Jerry. It's been an amazing conversation. Love talking with you. As always, love the way that we're able to express and converse, have that civil conversation, have the ability to find the common ground.
You're
appreciate
welcome
the
back.
opportunity.
You're
and
welcome.
Ed, thank you for being part of this.
Yeah, happy to be part of it. I know Jerry had most of the questions tonight. I'm just glad to know that there are more like-minded people who really want to make a change in the world, and that you're one of them. I did have one question, though. I saw a thing last year where Idaho was destroying a whole bunch of potatoes. Do you know anything about that story?
Yes, I do. This was one of the supply chain management things that was going on. During the COVID shutdown, we didn't have truckers. We didn't have people that were available to move the food that was being produced. We were slowing down on travel. And when it came time to harvest the crop, there was no one to move the harvest. So all of it went into landfill.
Recycling, basically.
Here we're running into a situation again. We're coming up on harvest time again. And we're looking at UPS shutdowns. We're looking at yellow freight shutdowns. We're looking at Teamsters saying, you know what, we aren't earning what we need to be earning to do the job we do. So here it is, whether it's COVID, whether it's strikes, we're looking at supply chain issues that continue to hit us because the people aren't getting paid to do the work that we need done.
Right.
I'm all about the unions. Don't get me wrong. I support the unions. I support what Yellow Freight's doing. I support what the Teamsters are doing, because this has been a long time coming. We've seen what organized crime has done to the union's reputation in years past.
Yeah.
But it's time for us to bring back that association of laborers, that ability for collective bargaining for wages, that ability to set the standard for your local economy, to be part of that conversation in a meaningful way that isn't dependent upon our politicians and our bankers.
Well, the unions also became very corporatized. I think that I want to look back on the Clinton years where suddenly the Democratic Party kind of abandoned labor and realizing they could make more money aligning with Wall Street, big business, and less with the American working class. And I think it's at that time too that so many unions were infiltrated by the managerial class running and making decisions that were, contrary to the interests of the average union member. So, but we're seeing,
and we saw that.
And we're seeing the attack on unions right now with what Biden pulled in December and what we're bracing for with the upcoming UPS strike. A lot of people are speculating he's going to betray labor again, same way he did with the railway workers union. I just hope all the unions will just stand up in solidarity to a point where it's like, it's enough's enough. We can't continue letting our elected representatives manipulate and continue to abandon the working class that built this country and that needs the advocacy that, our representatives have abandoned as well for their donors.
That's one of those things we saw with the centralization of power of the unions. The union leaders aren't the tradesmen anymore. When was the last time a union leader was actually a tradesman and not just some, politician who, knew somebody who knew somebody and wormed his way into the trades union? We have people who are fully in bed with the corporation leadership, with the CEOs. Mm-hmm. They have dinner with the CEOs. They don't have dinner with the tradesmen. They don't have dinner with the people they are supposed to be serving. They're having dinner with the people they betray them to. We see that. And it's one of those situations where, again, it's more about the local leadership. It's time for the local leaders to tell the centralized leadership, you know what? I'm tired of you selling us out. I want Chicago Teamsters, local, making the call as to whether they strike. I want the Boise Teamsters Union local making the call as to whether they're going to strike. I want the California locals making the call. It's time we cut out the central leadership. It's time we cut out the national, leadership that has consistently betrayed labor to the corporations. It's time for the locals to stand up and say, you know what? If the people in our trade, if the people with our skills are going to survive into this next century, if we're going to be able to take our families and be able to create a legacy for them that is going to exist into the future, the power needs to be taken back by the locals.
Absolutely.
See this guy? He gets it. He gets it.
Yeah. Speaks for on a lot of the stuff that we talk about here in Chicago that affects everyone nationwide and all their cities. Basic issues, work, living wage, homelessness, representation and advocacy, healthcare, housing. Yeah. Joe, thanks so much for joining us. Yeah. And, you're always welcome back. We'll keep track of what's going on, and just DM me on Facebook next time you want to join us and keep us updated on how your campaigns are going and any further developments.
Sounds good, Jerry.
Okay.
Peace. Have a good one, Jerry.
Thanks,
and take care.
Thanks.
And if you want to follow Joe's campaign, you can find him on Twitter at IDJoe4Idaho.
There you go.
All right, that was good. I mean, we had 4 disconnections, but still a great interview.
Yeah.
And also, he is the best backdrop I've ever seen, Jerry.
Definitely. All right, let me get our next story up before we use our show bumper.
Oh, that story.
Yep, that story.
Oh, well, then you know what time it is.
I know what time it is.
Actually, do I know what time it is?
I'll let you manage it.
All right, I do know what time it is.
I look at this town, and I don't like what I see anymore.
Oh, wait, hold on, Jerry. Stand by for news. Jerry's microphone is doing the hinky thing again.
As always, CPD is back in the news. We reported on Tuesday the fact that the COPA investigation regarding the sexual assault allegations against migrants has kind of hit a dead end because now they can't find the migrants that filed or lodged the complaints, which completely flies in the face of reason to me, because they would have had to have talked to people ahead of time and collected, I guess, testimonies or reports, especially in the case of that underage migrant girl that was impregnated. So that's part of our cop watch tonight that we will address as far as other allegations against another cop in another part of the city. But before that, this story broke. Let's put up the screen. Comes from Max Blaisdell over at Block Club Chicago. Cook County State's Attorney Kim Foxx releases a list of cops who cannot testify for prosecutors in criminal trials. And there's a reason. They lie. They cover things up. Information, witnesses disappear. I saw in response to this story on Twitter, the usual suspects, the Chicago authoritarian, contrarian, complaining that Kim Foxx is, silencing police that have a right to speak. One of the cops who's not allowed to testify for prosecutors is that asshole who assaulted the kid in Park Ridge. Remember that story?
Yes.
CPD cop. He thought this youth had stolen his kid's bicycle, so he assaulted him, put the pressure on his back, and of course he got off. There was a question in regards to the testimony of the kids that were there, but there was video that showed this guy assaulted this kid, and this kid had nothing to do with the theft of his kid's bicycle against the kid he assaulted. He was on the list of cops that are not allowed to testify. And somebody on social media said, "Oh, well, maybe because the witnesses in that situation lied, he shouldn't be prevented from testifying." No, he should
lie.
Did they?
That whole trial was a miscarriage.
Did you have a dirty judge, perhaps? Did your eyes deceive you that he assaulted? I think the kid was 14 years old, and almost could have caused back injuries to the kid in assaulting him because
don't mess with people's spines. That's not cool.
That cop was on this list that Kim Foxx has released. That's the point that I'm getting to. Fox said publicizing the names of cops whose backgrounds undermine their credibility as witnesses is a step towards transparency. And you know what? I'm not a big fan of Kim Foxx, but I agree. She's absolutely right in this situation. The Cook County
and it's also strategy, Jerry, because if these guys are going to be unreliable witnesses or questionable witnesses, it ruins her case if they end up lying on the stand.
Yeah. The Cook County State's Attorney's Office released its do not call list this week, publicizing the names of police officers whom prosecutors will not use as witnesses in court because of their histories of criminal misconduct or serious wrongdoing. Sounds fair. The public list comes about 2 months after the tribe reported that 275 cops, dozens of whom are still on the force, either were barred from testifying for Cook County prosecutors or whose backgrounds had to be disclosed to defense attorneys if they were called to the stand. Previous reporting on the issue from WGN and USA Today disclosed far fewer names and showed how prosecutors mostly communicated over email if there was a problem with an officer serving as a witness. Making the list public is part of a series of reforms to increase public awareness and knowledge about the opaque inner workings of what is the second largest prosecutor's office in the country, according to a statement from Fox's office. The credibility of our office and the integrity of the work that we do requires that we are as transparent as we can possibly be, Fox said in an interview with Block Club. Fox's spokesperson added in a statement that her office also was updating its internal policies about when prosecutors must tell defense attorneys information about officers that may undermine their credibility as witnesses. Chicago Police and the Fraternal Order of Police, the main union representing rank-and-file officers, did not respond to requests for comment about the list. Wah. Weren't they the ones who were threatening last week to sue anybody that disclosed the names of the cops who were accused of these?
Honestly, Jerry, I'm shocked that there hasn't been a mass exodus yet. Weren't they all going to leave after Brandon Johnson became mayor? How many days has it been now?
We were promised blood in the streets.
Yeah.
and a mass exodus of CPD, neither of which has happened, which, I'm a little disappointed in because it would have certainly added to the drama and exciting coverage that we like to provide here at Chicago Corner. You know what, Ed? They're nothing but a lot of talk. Nothing but a lot of talk, like De Niro said as Al Capone in The Untouchables. You're nothing but a lot of talk and a badge. All right. Reynaldo Guevara and Robert Baker, two officers with well-documented histories of misconduct who were omitted from the previous list, were added to the new list shortly after the tribe reported on the issue. What an honor to be added to this list.
Yeah.
Dozens of people have accused Guevara of framing them in numerous murder cases over decades.
Oh, that's where I remember that name from.
Yeah. Fox's office began investigating cases tied to Guevara in 2019 and has repeatedly petitioned courts to vacate the convictions. Nearly 40 people had their convictions thrown out, and the resulting misconduct lawsuits have cost the city tens of millions of dollars. Baker was suspended for 120 days last year after he lied about his ties to the Proud Boys extremist group, city officials said. More than 20 officers were added to the list in 2023. Some of those include Adolfo Bolanos, who fatally shot a 17-year-old boy during a traffic stop in 2019, and David De Leon, who faces charges for sexually abusing a minor. Other current and former officers on both versions of the list include, here's our Hall of Shame.
16 shots and a cover-up.
Jason Van Dyke, who fatally shot teenager Laquan McDonald 16 times in 2015 and was found guilty of second-degree murder in 2018. Carol Schwiesiuk, who is charged with participating in the January 6th assault on the U.S. Capitol. Sergeant Ronald Watts, who pled guilty to stealing drug money from an FBI informant and has been routinely accused of falsifying evidence against residents of a former Ida B. Wells homes in Bronzeville. Cook County judges have since thrown out over 200 felony convictions tied to Watts. His former team members, Khalat Mohammed and Alvin Jones, are also on the list. All of the officers were thoroughly vetted before the list was released, Fox said. We were exhausting all of our due diligence to make sure that we were not adding people who did not belong in the list because we recognize the weight that it carries, Fox said. Decades of police misconduct scandals have eroded substantial trust in the criminal legal system, Fox's office said. Cook County has repeatedly logged the highest number of exonerations in the country, with 126 overturned cases in 2022 alone. According to the National Registry of Exonerations, nearly all of those overturned convictions in 2022 were tied to Watts and Guevara, according to researchers. Adam Davidson, an assistant professor of criminal and constitutional law at the University of Chicago, said the release of the list could have two important positive effects. It helps to make more salient for the public this idea that police officers are not infallible when they're not on the stand. It also helps to lower the burden on defense attorneys who are already overburdened to keep track of this stuff themselves.
Wait, so what you're saying is cops lie? They do.
I look at this town, and I don't like what I see anymore.
Yeah. The lengths we go for a laugh.
David B. Owens, an assistant professor of law at the University of Washington and a partner at the Chicago-based civil rights firm Lovie & Lovie, said the public list is a welcome but not radical change. Other prosecutors in major cities like Brooklyn's Eric Gonzalez and Baltimore's Marilyn Mosby, Mosby have also published similar lists. This isn't some huge thing that's never been heard of, Owen said. It is good in the sense that it's right, but will it change the public's perception? That's hard to say.
Mischaracterize is a very long way of saying lie.
Yep.
They are.
They're carrying way too much water not using the word lie. Okay, so transitioning into the other story.
Hold on. It wasn't a lie. It was bullshit.
What's that quote from? Oh,
I can't remember. Oh, Spaceballs, right?
Spaceballs, that's right. Yeah. All right, so we got this story from WTTW. All right, we're not clear yet on what is going on with the alleged sexual
Johnny
assaults.
Cash live in Denmark. When's Saturday, August 12th? I'm going to tune in for that. Okay. Sorry.
Thank you.
That was the ad at the top of the article there.
Well, we're not clear on the allegations of assault and rape allegations against CPD cops in relation to migrants that were entrusted in their care. This seems to have some solid evidence behind it. Chicago police officer who had improper sexual relationship with a 911 caller suspended for 9 months. As reported by Matt Masterson, a Chicago police officer has been suspended for 9 months. I guess the reason I'm sharing this story, Ed, is because suddenly the story about the assault on the migrants is like going nowhere. And some people are speculating because a lot of these migrants who are coming from countries where they don't trust law enforcement are now going underground because they don't trust that if they come forward here regarding assaults against them, that they're going to be believed or that there's going to be any justice for it because they're used to that kind of culture.
Yeah, because cop culture worldwide has a slight fascist leaning to it historically. So
as we basically established with the prior story that there is a list of cops who lie, this story kind of supports the fact that this bad shit happens and it gives the good cops a bad name, right? Chicago police officer has been suspended for 9 months after the city's police board ruled he displayed remarkably poor judgment by engaging in an improper sexual relationship with a woman who had called 911 following a burglary. Someone who called the police for help. 911, this cop decided it was appropriate for him to engage in an improper sexual relationship with the victim of the burglary. Yeah. The board common sense, Ed, there is none. There's no common sense. There's no.
There is a porno plot here, but this is a serious story. 911, what's your emergency? I'm reporting a burglary. Someone has stolen my heart. And then it gets worse from there. But no, this is a serious story.
For once, I'm actually grateful for that detour to levity. Well played. The board, during its regular monthly meeting Thursday, reached an 8-1 decision to suspend Officer Daniel Otero for 270 days for violating a CPD rule which prohibits any action or conduct which impedes the department's efforts to achieve its policy and goals or brings discredit upon the department. Hey, man, this guy just wanted to get some. Forget about the rules. He wanted to get what he wanted to get.
Dude, you're wearing a uniform. You're representing an agency of the city.
Jesus.
Show a little professionalism.
Dude,
there.
It wasn't even consensual, so we can't joke about it. Otero
really?
had fit. Well,
okay. Yeah,
Otero,
that's all coerced. Yeah.
Well, no, wait. So I'm not sure if this is a separate incident or the incident in question he was currently suspended for, but it says Otero had faced a possible termination after he was accused of sexually assaulting a woman hours after she'd reported a burglary at her home. That's a separate charge. And this guy, he was still, clearly he's got a good union, right, Ed? That keeps him on the job. That charge dates back to April 3rd of 2016 when a then 22-year-old woman called 911 after she'd been awakened in her apartment by a stranger shining a flashlight at her. The woman ran to her neighborhood's apartment while the intruder fled with the woman's wallet, purse, and cell phone, according to the police board's findings. Otero and another officer responded and interviewed her, finding that she was clearly frightened. After the officers completed their report on the incident, the woman asked to be taken to a public space rather than returning to her apartment. Otero claimed he accompanied her. Okay, no, this is the same incident by which he has now been suspended for 9 months. Otero claimed he accompanied her back into her apartment to get some personal items before leaving. When he said she began flirting and touching him before giving him her email address and asking him to contact her to hang out later, according to the police board report. Now, if that were true, Ed, if she did flirt with him and touched him and gave him her email address, you would imagine that the proper course of action after that would be to ignore it, report it, as it could be a potential problem in the future if you're dealing with a victim who's dealing with some other mental health issues that doesn't understand herself the inappropriateness of that suggested liaison. According to Otero, he emailed the woman before the end of his shift and then picked her up at a Starbucks after he was off duty. He testified that the woman wanted to go back to her apartment with Otero, where they engaged in sexual intercourse. Do you think this guy could have easily avoided this by just going home? Now the victim is the one he's putting the blame on. And you know what? Even if she did flirt with him and gave her his email, the onus and responsibility was on him, Ed, to act professionally and responsibly. He didn't.
Yeah.
But the woman reported to the Civilian Office of Police Accountability that this occurred without her consent. She said Otero had asked for her email address, which who are you going to believe here, Ed? I mean, I'm sorry. I can't believe the cop because of all the other misconduct we see. All right. She said Otero had asked her for her email, and clearly the board believed her as well, you know, in regards to the fact he was suspended. But she said Otero had asked her for her email address, which she provided in place of her phone number because her phone had been stolen, according to Copa's report on the incident. The woman said that when Otero arrived at her apartment, he suggested they have a drink before he guided her to her bed, the Copa report states. This is horrifying. At that point, she claimed he sexually assaulted her while she told Copa she felt confused, in disbelief, and ashamed after the incident. It wasn't until 4 years later that she reported the alleged assault to Copa. Both Copa and former police superintendent David Brown recommended Otero be fired from the department. According to the police board, the woman declined to have any involvement in Otero's disciplinary proceedings and did not testify before the board during its investigation. Oreo. The charge that was upheld did not accuse him of sexual assault. Instead, the board determined Otero's actions reflect adversely upon the CPD. His conduct undermines public confidence in the judgment of CPD officers in the department's mission. The board wrote in its findings, in particular, members of the public are more likely to be hesitant to call for police assistance for themselves or others if they are concerned that responding officers may later attempt to engage in a sexual relationship with them when they are frightened or they may feel vulnerable. Do you kind of see some of the connections to the amazing disappearing sexually assaulted migrants?
Yeah,
one can't help but wonder.
It's a problem because he's in a position of power, right? You can't take advantage of civilians that way.
You should not, be just it's
not
just not
even not even if it might be considered consensual by both parties. You can't.
You can't do that in the workplace. If you're managing a department and you have someone that's under your supervision making those overtures, you don't do it. Whether you want to or not, or whether you think you're getting the signs, you just don't do it. It's a matter of professionalism. It's a matter of responsibility. It's a matter of just ethics. But this guy, we're never going to know, Ed, what the truth is here. But the fact that this guy didn't use his better judgment, I think clear, and that she came forward 4 years later, if I was a betting man, I'm going to bet money on the fact that, through whatever counseling she went through in her trauma, she was able to finally step forward and request some accountability and responsibility for the assault. The lone dissenting vote was cast by board president Guion Foreman, who felt that more severe disciplinary action against Otero was justified. Clearly, but got off with 9 months suspension. That's it. 9 months suspension for deciding you're going to take a victim's email that you're given in the investigation of a crime, and wow, I'm speechless.
I don't know what more else there is to add to that.
It's
you can't take advantage of people like that when you're in a position of power. That's fairly cut and dry. And you're a law enforcement officer. You're dealing with people who are in the various levels of trauma all the time. You should know better.
Yeah. All right, we're transitioning into some lighter stories here at the tail end of the show. We've reported on this in the past. beautiful vintage signs across our neighborhoods, adding character to different communities, disappearing. Wasn't it the guy who wasn't one of the leads for the Smashing Pumpkins who lives up in Highland Park, who bought the signage? Yeah, he bought the signage for the Orange Garden.
Orange Garden.
Yeah. Well, thankfully, it seems that there's more appreciation and protection being offered for Chicago's vintage signs under a new city ordinance. Signs and murals at least 30 years old have cultural value, can be preserved after city review. The measure was inspired by the Grace's Furniture sign in Logan Square. This comes from Mike Bloom at Block Club Chicago. Chicago older people backed a preservation ordinance Wednesday to preserve the city's vintage signs as historic landmarks. City Council voted Wednesday in favor of the measure to protect commercial signs that are at least 30 years old and have significant iconic or cultural value, subject to a city review. Previously, such signs were vulnerable from being torn down or whitewashed if the property owner let their city permit expire. The legislation was crafted by Alderman Carlos Ramirez Rosa of the 35th and Mayor Brandon Johnson, and born out of an effort to save the Grace's Furniture sign in Logan Square. I keep liking this mayor more and more and more, although I already liked him, Ed. I'm glad to see him getting behind these kind of initiatives that would previously be ignored.
Yeah.
The other
although I can see some potential issues with this ordinance, but we can continue.
Well, let's take a detour to that.
Take a detour?
Yeah. I mean, because you mean abuse of by property owners?
Well, what's going to happen is you're going to see a lot of signs getting saved, but then the buildings that they're attached to are going to be like a mismatch hodgepodge. I think there's already something in progress over where you guys remember the Dinkles Bakery over on Lincoln Avenue. Well, they're saving the sign, but there's not going to be a bakery there anymore. It's apartments.
You know, Ed, this reminds me of the beautiful signage marquee of the Esquire Theater downtown, which is long lost, and it's boutique clothing shops on the first floor level. It's a reminder that we had this great theater there downtown, and it's gone. And as much as I am grateful that the Esquire Theater there on the same level, I feel like what a fucking tease. It's gone. You know?
Yeah, and so in one way it's kind of cool that they're saving those little pieces of culture, but it's also a terrible reminder of the things we've lost.
Yeah.
Because Dinkles Bakery, someone should have saved that. Someone should have made an effort to say, look, Dinkles family, if your family doesn't want to take this thing on, give it to all the workers. Give the business to the workers and let them run a workers' co-op version of the bakery. They've been there forever doing all the hard labor for this business. Let them try and make it. But
we reported a successful story like that with Clark and Devon Hardware a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
A mainstay of the community. It's been there forever. The premise. I mean, I don't know if they've got any vintage signage that needs to be preserved, but just an example of a mainstay in the community. You know, something consistency, something familiar, something that is ingrained in the local community that's preserved and continues to live on.
Yeah, and the candlelight sign that you're seeing here from the story, they don't mention it, at least not yet. That great pizza at this place. It's on the north side of the city. They're not closed yet, but if they ever have to go under, this ordinance will help at least save this amazing classic sign. It's just, you know, what's going to be replacing a pizzeria if it goes under, you know? Will it become the Candlelight Theater or the Candlelight Apartments, the Candlelight Condos? We don't know.
Complete sideline here, but before we go on, as we're talking about businesses that we're worried about losing, I read this week that the Pickwick Theater, which has still been operating and showing movies, we reported months ago, the owners were closing it down. The stewardship of the Pickwick Theater has been taken over by the management of the Copernicus Center, which I think is great news.
Okay.
The owners and management of the Copernicus Center over on West Lawrence have had great success, demonstrated great success and stewardship over the old Gateway Theater, now renamed the Copernicus Center. My only complaint with that was that they got rid of the old marquee in the front of the old Gateway Theater, but the theater inside is preserved and kept up. It's a beautiful, beautiful venue. They are taking over managing the Pickwick, so Park Ridge, the Pickwick, is going to be resuming, and I mean, that's the center of that community. You can't imagine that type of a loss, you know? Back to this article. Developers Blue Star Properties and Mark Realty plan to redevelop the old furniture store, and this speaks to your concern, Ed, or point, at the 2616-18 North Milwaukee Avenue into a mixed-use project with the Logan Square Athletic Club as its anchor tenant. The building's neon sign, which was hung over Milwaukee Avenue for at least 70 years, was in danger of being removed as part of the redevelopment project. The city recommended the sign be torn down because the previous property owner didn't renew their permit. Ramirez Rosa and Logan Square Preservation President Andrew Schneider appealed to the city for help, finding that many other developers and property owners were running into the same problem. In the end, it's about providing small business owners with more options around signage. Ramirez Rosa said in June, so many of our vintage signs are iconic of our neighborhoods, and it's a travesty when we lose them, so this provides an avenue to preserve them for years to come. The sign ordinance also applies to murals and painted ghost signs around the city, which we've also shared stories of. Last year, the owners of Memo's Hot Dogs in Pilsen were temporarily unable to renew their business license because a mural featuring a hot dog on the side of the building was deemed a public way advertisement. We talked about that one.
Yeah.
The legislation allows for more artistic murals and options for small businesses to decorate, Ramirez Rosa said. So, score one for the good guys here. Great news. JR in the live chat shares, history doesn't mean much in comparison to corporate greed. For example, the destruction of a Civil War hospital or early century movie theater like you're mentioning. Yeah, too often it doesn't, but I think we've got better minds at the helm right now in city council, steering leadership. Okay, so here is a great story of something happening in Chicago. No, not that one. Ed, Young Authors event aims to share. Oh, wrong article.
Not this one?
No.
Okay. Oh, this one.
Yeah.
See, I jumped the gun there.
Yep.
Oh, I've got it too.
Kind of spoiled the tease, but okay. Here we go.
Nobody saw that. Nobody watches this show, right, Jerry?
I hope not. Block Club.
Hi,
Chicago.
everybody.
Also, just if our friend in the live chat returns, don't delete their comments. It's evidence. Okay, so this comes from Rashad Alexander, Block Club Chicago. Young Authors Events aims to shatter barriers between the disabled and non-disabled worlds. I thought that this was like a fantastic story as we promote things going on around the city. This is something definitely people should go check into. Not only, will they be entertained, but I think that they will learn a lot. Life is in the Details from Tellin' Tales Theater will feature storytelling at Sulzer Library by 8 young adult writers with and without disabilities from Illinois and Wisconsin. July is Disability Pride Month, and a Chicago-based nonprofit theater program is offering a free storytelling program that showcases the experiences and perspectives of both disabled and non-disabled writers. Tellin' Tales Theater's young adult writers will host Life is in the Details, 2 p.m. Sunday at Sulzer Library, 4455 North Lincoln Avenue. 8 young adult writers with and without disabilities will participate in an open dialogue about the little details of their lives that had big impacts on them. The writers are from Illinois and Wisconsin, and all have a story to tell. From Eli Walsh's struggles with imposter syndrome to Olivia Rosa's story about facing homelessness, they know what it's like to have their backs against the wall. I'm always struck about how revealing they are, how young people are able to dig deep into their circumstances and reveal their experiences, said Teki Lomnicki, artistic director of Tellin' Tales and co-founder of the program. It brings out the connection you get from telling your story. The idea for Tellin' Tales started in 1994 when Lomnicki, Michael Blackwell, and Nancy Nevin Shelton produced plays based on Southern folks who overcame the challenges of their disabilities. Lomnicki was born with dwarfism and said she struggled as an actress coming up in the industry. This prompted Telling Tales to launch summer theater camps in 1995 for kids with and without disabilities, including the Chicago Children's Museum. The program is also partnered with WBEZ and After School Matters. Telling Tales shows, including Sundays, all have sign language interpreters present. In 2016, then Mayor Rahm Emanuel proclaimed May 21st Telling Tales Day in Chicago, honoring the program's rich local history and dedication to providing a platform for those with and without disabilities. Lomnicki said the program shows how there can still be humor even with topics that may be deemed sensitive to others. I think it's the talent of our instructors that help bring out the humor. Like, I will say, leave that in. It's really funny, she said. That's what makes people laugh, that realization that we all have those kinds of crazy thoughts in our heads. Life is in the Details is free and is for all ages. Telling Tales will also be doing an ensemble event at nearby Mrs. Murphy and Sons Irish Bistro, 3905 North Lincoln Avenue in September. Details on these events and more can be found at the program's website. There's a whole bunch of things that come out of what people tell us, what people have inside of them, Lomnicki said. It's a really great program. So we've got that story linked in our show notes below. Once again, this is happening 2 p.m. Sunday at the Sulzer Library, 4455 North Lincoln Avenue. If I wasn't in so much goddamn pain standing up, I would try to make it out and view it. I don't know if they're gonna. I wonder if they're gonna be streaming it or if there'll be some way to check out these stories after the event. But there you have it. Great event happening that I hope everybody will go and participate in or listening to, be attentive to. Okay, now we can get to Escort Barbie.
Oh, the other thing.
Yeah. So as everybody is no doubt probably aware with the social media and promotional barrage, the Barbie movie opens in theaters this weekend. I don't really have a big interest in seeing it. I've heard some stuff in advance that while it was originally touted as a family film, it looks like good, mindless fun. Apparently, there's a whole lot of political, gender, culture war messaging in the movie, which I just have no interest in. And, I don't want to judge the movie without seeing it, but from what I've heard, I'm just like, yeah, sounds like it's just more virtue signaling. And I'm just going to go ahead and say it without having said it. I trust the sources I've heard, Ed. It seems there's a lot of misandry in the movie. You know what misandry means?
I want to hear your definition of it.
Well, misandry is basically like male bashing.
Oh, okay.
I mean, that's as I understand it. It's we've got misogyny, which is female bashing, which is unacceptable, and misandry is male bashing. I don't think either should be tolerated. But from what I understand about the movie, a lot of the narrative is propped up on men bad, women great. I think both women and men are great, and I don't think that you should escalate men at the expense of women or women at the expense of men. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of gender culture wars right now that relate to entertainment kind of, take an easy shot at promoting the strength and virtues and power of women cheaply at the expense of stepping on men. And I don't think that you should do the same with men over women. I think that, this is just a cheap tactic used by both genders, the insecure in wherever their place is. Yeah, we do have to establish, and I think that we do need to recognize that there is a patriarchy in this country, absolutely, that has operated at the expense of most diverse populations, women, genders, misrepresented people. But by the same token, I just think that it's too easy and cheap a shot to, as I understand it, simplify things as I'm hearing the Barbie movie is, without having seen it. So
I haven't even really watched the trailer, so I really don't have anything invested in.
Well, this is what I'm hearing in the review.
In this,
yeah.
I don't really. It doesn't bother me for people to have decide that they want to do an identity movie and they want to focus on things that have been underrepresented in the past.
Yeah.
And I mean, in our era, we had Spice Girls with the their girl power stuff, and I'm like, fine, I don't care. It's men bashing is not a new phenomenon.
No, it's not. And I could
so
care less.
It doesn't bug me about.
I could care less also, but I'm of an age right now and a background and a life experience where I have always positioned myself as somebody who is trying to champion the underdog, the powerless, the vulnerable, women when they've been unfairly marginalized, preyed upon, whatever. Anybody that we advocate for here on this program. And it just seems, and we talked about this before when we were questionably accused in a previous show with some imitations we were doing of being disrespectful, when no, we were just doing shit in good fun. And this whole attitude of like, because there've been some really, really, really shitty men in history in power, that's kind of like a blanket contempt for most of the male population. It's a little bit unnerving. That's where I'm coming from with this. While I could care less about what Barbie says or what the messages in the movie, to basically dismiss and have contempt for many who have been and are allies of any vulnerable or underrepresented or misrepresented or marginalized movement. I that's where I take offense, not at being a man, just at the fact that people are dismissed that way.
Well, I just feel like, I don't want to put this all on Barbie though, because neither of us have seen the movie. No. And you're going off of a few people on the internet,
some reviews I've heard,
or some reviews you've heard, and who knows what their intent is.
They gave a whole breakdown of the plot, and it's like I don't have any reason to disregard like a point by point breakdown of what the script is, along with what I've seen. And again, I could care less. Here's the point that I want to poke fun of, though. Okay, in our show, pointing to a Barbie story. Barbie was ripped off by Mattel. It was inspired by a German cartoon that at the time, back in the 1940s, inspired an adult action figure of the said cartoon character who was a high-end call girl named...
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
No! Oh, God, no. It's just not... I no problem with that. I just think it's funny in that how... this movie, Barbie, clearly decided to reimagine what Barbie was and dismiss the actual origin story of Barbie. That's kind of what I wanted to make fun of here. With all of this stuff about Barbie's addressing the patriarchy, and Barbie is like, possibly engaged in some misandry in the script, which, it's a freaking plastic doll. This is probably a 2-hour toy commercial, right? That Mattel is relying on. The actual history of Barbie, I don't know a lot of people know about. And I thought it'd be interesting to share in this weekend of Barbie dominating the media. Meet Lily, the high-end German call girl who became Barbie. The article is reported by Messy Nessie. This is from 2016. So it turns out Barbie's original design was based on a German adult gag gift escort doll named Lily. That's right. She wasn't a dentist or surgeon, an Olympian gymnast, a pet stylist, or an ambassador for world peace, and she certainly wasn't a toy for little girls. Fine. Unbeknownst to most, Barbie actually started out life in the late 1940s as a German cartoon character created by artist Reinhard Buthien for the Hamburg-based tabloid Bild Zeitung. The comic strip character known as Bild Lily, a post-war gold-digging buxom broad who got by in life seducing wealthy male suitors. Hey, nothing wrong with that. And then we've got some cartoons here. She was famously quick-witted and known to talk back when it came to male authority. In one cartoon, Lily is warned by a policeman for illegally wearing a bikini out on the sidewalk. Lily responds, "Oh, and in your opinion, what part should I take off?" She became so popular that in 1953, the newspaper decided to market a three-dimensional version, which was sold as an adult novelty toy, available to buy from bars, tobacco kiosks, and adult toy stores. They were often given out as bachelor party gag gifts and dangled from a car's rear-view mirror. Parents considered the doll inappropriate for children, and a German brochure from the 1950s described Lily as always discreet and with her impressive wardrobe. She was the star of every bar. She did indeed have such a wide range of outfits and accessories you could buy for her that eventually little girls began wanting her as a play doll too. While toy factories tried to cash in on her popularity with children, Lily still remained a successful adult novelty, especially outside of Germany. A journalist for the New Yorker magazine, Ariel Levy, later referred to Lily as a sex doll. Enter 1950s. One of the founders of Mattel, Ruth Handler, pictured above, was traveling to Europe and bought a few Lily dolls to take home. She reworked the design of the doll and later debuted Barbie at the New York Toy Fair on March 9th of 1959. Mattel acquired the rights to build Lily in 1964, and production of the German doll ceased. Funny how Barbie's lighter skin tone was just about the only noticeable change in the early days. Not that big a change in the doll design. And the rest is history you're a little more familiar with, and no doubt one Mattel is a little more comfortable with. So which version would you prefer? Barbie's ballsy European precursor or Mattel's squeaky clean look-alike? Or the version currently in theaters? The choice is yours. I could care less about the Barbie movie, Ed, aside from the fact that if we're going to actually have serious conversations about the patriarchy and how it's been crushing and oppressive over so many diverse, vulnerable, marginalized, and abandoned populations throughout the years, let's not lump all men into that discussion, because we're not all that bad, I guess is what I'm getting at. I hope.
Yeah, but the bad ones are pretty bad.
Yeah, they are, and they give the rest of us who are advocates and trying to help, don't, as we often many times say, you can't lump all the cops into the category of being bad because of the bad ones. The good ones need to stand up more to the bad ones, which I think a lot of decent men do. But, we're also dealing with a horrible culture of toxic masculinity that is celebrated that I just can't understand, which I guess feeds the flames of that. So anyway, that's our show. That's our show for tonight. That's everything we got. Ed's got our
pretty
website
good show.
up. Was it? I hope
think
so. Had a great guest, great conversation. Aren't going past 10:30. I have some time to get some food since I haven't eaten yet. Anything you want to share, Ed?
You want to find us and you're looking and you can't find us? Head over to ChicagoCornerTV.com. And when you get there, you'll see a website that kind of looks like this. And if you scroll down, you'll see we got a little update at the top when we decide to throw an update in there. Tells you the latest from Chicago Corner, telling you to join us in the live chat Tuesday and Friday nights at 7:30 p.m. Central Time. And if you don't have your Brandon Bingo card, you can download it there. There's a link right there near the top. And if you'd like to support us on this channel, if you like the stuff you're seeing or want to see more of it, you can support us financially at patreon.com/Chicago Corner.
And our recent exclusive member-only content includes the return of Kira and her newborn Dash. You get a chance to see Kira and her new family member behind the scenes. If you decide to join our Patreon for $5 a month, little goes a long way. If you can't afford it, we completely understand. Just share and tell people about the show if you enjoy it. That's just as good, and we appreciate that support as well.
And as we scroll further down on the website, you can see you can actually watch the show right on the website if you want to. We're making sure that happens. So if you have trouble finding us on YouTube or Rockfin or any of the other platforms that we're streaming on, you can always head over to ChicagoCornerTV.com, and there's links to all of those things. We got our Twitter page. You see the Rockfin button. There's the YouTube, the Facebook, the Instagram. And our shows, I think, are still getting archived over on Odyssey. Also, sometimes it takes a little while for the latest one to get over there. But if you're ever needing to watch some of the back episodes and you can't find them on the other platforms, you can head over to Odyssey.com and find them as well. We have a viewer poll. What platform are you watching us on? Go and, if you're on Twitter, head over to ChicagoCornerTV.com and hit the Twitter thing and hit vote. Let us know you're watching us from Twitter, or just hit us up on Twitter and tell us you're watching us. There's our Twitter feed there, so it's kind of like Inception right now, because that's us posting the show that you're watching right now. And we have a few useful links and mutual aid links there on the website as well. You want to report potholes in Chicago, you can. There's a link for that. There's accessible transportation info for the city of Chicago. You can donate to the Night Ministry, donate to a food bank. Do you need help paying your utilities? Head to communityutility.org. They might have some money for you. And other stuff like that, like the Love Fridge, plowing the sidewalks. I'm going to have to update the city council thing because I'm told that they replaced Legistar with something new. So I'll have to fix that. But you got the Girl I Guess voting guide, and then the one we made called Man I Suppose.
The one Ed.
So next time there's an election, we're going to give you a list, if we remember far enough ahead of time, of the people we think you probably might want to vote for, if voting is your thing. Some people voting isn't your thing. And you can read the Chicago Corner Manifesto, which was the thing that we wanted all of the candidates who were running for mayor to read and sign, and a good portion of them at least received a copy. We don't know how much of it they read. We know Brandon Johnson got a copy, and we were hoping to get him or someone from his staff on the show. We may still be able to do that. So that's going to be something to look forward to. So you want to keep tuning in to Chicago Corner. Again, this is a Friday show. You can come and watch us again on Tuesday at 7:30 p.m. Central Time. And and Jerry, we'll let Jerry get a word in edgewise now.
You got that, everyone?
At any rate, I'm so glad that you joined us this evening so you could watch Oreo pass by our host for this evening, Jerry Vasilatos.
All right, everybody. You heard it from Ed. Return to us next Tuesday. Hopefully, we'll also have some other entertainment in the live chat from my doppelganger, and we can continue to collect those and laugh. In the meantime, Ed, thanks for joining tonight, helping guide the show, and to the rest of Chicago as we go into the weekend. Please make sure, as always, that you watch out for each other, stay safe. Be vigilant, and remember, if it happens on the streets, you'll hear about it here on Chicago Corner with me, Ed, and this little shenanigan, this little monster. All right, everybody. Stay safe, Chicago. Have a good weekend. We'll see you next week.
Don't let me find you out here again.
We're trying to help you.
I don't need help.
What gives you the right? What's the difference between you and me?
I'm not wearing hockey pads.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.
The views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of any entities they represent. If you would like to be a guest on Chicago Corner, please email our host, Jerry, at chicagocorner.tv.